Are authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Au revoir, Qatar. It's all over for England as the Three Lions, sadly, were knocked out last night by France.
Well, good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 11th of December, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark.
Yeah, if you've just woken up and you went to bed early, maybe you don't know, but England are coming home after crashing out of the World Cup. Sadly, it is not coming home. Manager Gareth Southgate said he was really proud of his players, though, despite the way they met a quarter-final exit.
Penalties again, eh? Meanwhile, France playing shock outsiders Morocco next. They became the first African team in history to make the semi-finals after beating Portugal 1-0.
Meanwhile, emergency workers have been toiling through the night at a block of flats in Jersey after an explosion left 3 people dead and a dozen still missing. Residents reported smelling gas a while ago at the 3-storey building in St Helier.
The Health Secretary has warned that the planned walkouts by nurses will result in significant risks to patients. The RCN saying they will press pause on any strike action if a deal can be reached on pay.
And I hate to say it, but I have to say it, there's only 2 weeks now till Christmas. We're in Manchester checking out the festive markets, which have been voted apparently the best in the country.
And as ever, join in all of our programme, particularly your reaction to the football, of course. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, did you stay up to watch it?
Well, I listened to the first half on the train on the radio, which was quite dramatic, and then saw the second half, which was perhaps not the best thing to have done on the telly at home.
I fell asleep.
Penalties again.
I fell asleep, missed the first half entirely. And by the time we went into the second half, I thought, we've got a chance. But, you know, it didn't work. We ought to tell everybody why you're here, actually. Thank you for waking up very early in the morning.
Yes, I'm the substitute off the bench.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. But a
Got
great
my
one.
boots on.
Stephen was really, really getting more and more unwell throughout yesterday's programme. You could really tell that his throat was giving way and it's sniffling and snuffling, and in the end he just felt too ill to come into
even
bed.
lower than Barry White.
Yeah,
But
so
you remember
if you're
Disco
watching, and you
song.
never know, he might be, you'll sort of be clicking on to see how we're
Just
doing.
checking.
Aye,
Yeah, we will.
yeah.
Anyway, they're coming home. Not it's coming home. England out of the World Cup after losing to reigning champions France, so perhaps no disgrace in that.
I don't know if you agree, but you feel they came so close, don't you, to completing a memorable comeback after going behind twice. But Harry Kane missed that late penalty, which would have forced the game into extra time. Of course, we don't know how that would have gone either.
Yeah, there would be more penalties probably. France now going on to face the tournament's surprise contenders, Morocco, no less, in the semi-finals. England, well, they're preparing to make that long trip back home.
And the reaction, I mean, I'm only a fair-weather footballer. I'm only interested in football when it's something like yesterday.
It's a disaster.
I've sort of lost interest now from today, sadly, yeah. But people who are committed are so terribly upset. They'd come out in their droves to support the Three Lions, but went home with a familiar feeling, I'm afraid, of disappointment.
Well, our reporter Theo Chikombo getting a reaction to the heartbreaking loss.
Great atmosphere. I think that, everyone just was really getting behind the boys tonight. Obviously really wanted to win, but it's gutting that we didn't.
I thought that England were the better team. It was just unfortunate that France got a sneaky goal in, that second sneaky goal, and it's probably a bit too late in the game to crawl back from, so here we are.
I'm allowed to cry every 4 years, mate, and this is going to be the one. We were all over them all game, and just a few little tactical things, maybe having a number 10 down the middle. But, yeah, it is what it is.
I'm just really disappointed. I can't believe it. I thought England would be coming it home. I thought Portugal would be bringing it home as well. Sadly, no team.
More reaction now. Sports broadcaster Aidan is here, and you had the 2-1, I think, in your prediction.
No, I had 0-0 going into extra time and then penalties. I couldn't imagine that. Well, it's the same result anyway, isn't it? It's still penalties at the end of the day. But no, I mean, I think we should cast it back to yesterday afternoon. That was a huge incentive for England and France last night when Morocco got through. Yes, Morocco have been dogged. They've been very good throughout the tournament, very difficult to score against. But if you'd offered Morocco to either France or England last night as a semi-final opponent, they would have jumped at that. And then, of course, 17 minutes in, France take the lead. It's probably a little bit against the run of play, but I do think England responded very, very well, I have to say, for the rest of the half.
They really went for it, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. You can't say... but there's just this... Someone mentioned it last night to me. It's just that extra 5% they don't seem to have in these tournaments. I mean, you can ask questions now. You can look at Morocco. They've done more in the knockouts in the last week by knocking out Spain and Portugal than England have done in decades, because they've beaten some stellar opponents.
And therein lies the question, I suppose, as to what happens to Gareth Southgate now. He's got, 18 months left in his contract.
Yeah, that's right.
Has it been a little bit too cautious, a little bit too organised, and not allowing players to, go for their individual...
You could certainly argue that. I mean, I'm not one to raise questions during the tournament, because once he's there. But now they're out, I think questions should be asked. The problem is, I just don't... I mean, he said last night that he's going to give time to think about the situations. That tells me that it's going to be his decision, whatever he decides. He's not going to be pushed by the FA. But I'm not seeing an outstanding replacement. There's nobody on the tip of my tongue thinking, right, OK, he's going to do the job better.
He's got some young players now, Foden, Bellingham, that he could actually bring on and nurture and build a squad.
I've said for many times on this show, if you look at Germany's trajectory towards winning the World Cup in 2014, it was near misses 3 or 4 times, and England are kind of on that route right now. I do think they're there or thereabouts in terms of winning a tournament. But is it devilment they lack? Is it just, I don't know, is it the dark arts they're not quite as good at? I don't really know. I'm not really sure, but something's stopping them.
Something called penalties.
Yeah, I know, possibly. But even that though, Mark, if someone gives you the chance from 12 yards to secure the path into the extra time, and you see your leading striker take you, who's normally very reliable from the spot for club and country, you've got to take that opportunity. It can't all be luck. I don't believe penalties are luck anyway, whether in regular play or if they're in a shootout.
And there has been some comment about the balls out there being very light. So if you really wallop it, they seem to go skywards.
Yeah, that was more of a problem in South Africa in 2010. I've not really heard that about these ones, but you are right. We have seen the ball go over the bar a bit more.
Let's talk positives.
Yeah.
Who were the stars of last night's match?
I think
on both sides.
Both sides. Well, it's funny. Mbappe was kept fairly quiet, but one of the papers this morning, I think it's the Sunday Times, is saying he's the greatest decoy ever in football because he's basically shepherding England players out towards looking after him. Yeah, and it created space for some very talented players. I mean, Griezmann put the cross in for Olivier Giroud, who's 36. Harry Kane, we should say, he did equal the England's all-time scoring record last night on 53, so that's good. He would have overtaken it had he scored that second goal. But I just did not see him missing. He stepped up. There's nothing wrong with his stride, nothing wrong with the way he's looking at the ball. I suppose you could say, some people are saying, well, if he's taken one, maybe you should let someone else take that one because he's against...
My prize goes to Saka. And a lot of people thinking, why did they take him off? You know,
Yeah, well,
should have let him off.
Well, I think he was fouled twice in the lead up to France's first goal as well.
Maybe he was suffering a bit. With
Possibly, but I mean, you could ask questions about the referee. But even so, France, those two penalties that England got, France gave those opportunities to England. They were needless challenges, they were reckless challenges, and so you could say that England got some luck there as well.
I'm very disappointed you haven't brought your
crystal ball,
which you purchased for this very tournament.
I've been beaten to the punch actually
Well,
by
you
somebody
have.
else.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. No, let's talk about the asparagus lady. Because yesterday on the programme, we decided to bring in an asparamancer, and she made this unbelievable. She throws asparagus up into the air and then reads. Yes, that's right. And a bit like a tea leaf person, she reads I don't mean a tea leaf thief. I mean, you know what I mean. No, she reads the way the asparagus has fallen, and she was really good. Look at this.
England will be making an exit. This spear here says that England tonight will be the end of their World Cup dream. Suggests that Mr. Kane will actually score a goal, but it won't be the winning goal.
Right. Oh, well.
Can you predict the actual score?
It's going to be very close, just one goal in it.
Spooky.
She really was very good.
Is that the asparagus pointing to the ball going over the...
Well, it was, as I said yesterday, it was good tips either way.
Oh!
You had to revive that joke.
I know.
Well, it just shows... What about... Can I just ask about Rashford? Because, you know, he's one of the names... I go for the names that I recognise.
Yeah.
He was brought on very late, and then all the
was.
pressure of that last... Was it a corner?
No, it was a free kick.
Free kick,
and he nearly got it. It just
He
went
nearly
over
got it.
Yeah.
But can you... The pressure in almost the last 30 seconds of the entire
But I think
match.
he comes out of the tournament with his stock higher than when he went into it, because he didn't have a great Euro 2020, which was obviously played in 2021, but he came out with 3 goals. I think he can go back to his club.
Anyway,
on a high.
let's ask you to throw your asparagus up in the air.
OK.
And see who you think is going to win the World Cup now.
I'm going to go for Croatia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've, again, knocking on the door, they got into the final last time. It's interesting about Croatia because everyone says, well, they did really well last time in 2018, but only 4 of their 24-man squad is actually here this time. It's completely been revamped.
And
it's a hell of a story.
Those penalties.
They are indeed, and their midfield, Brozovic, Kovacic and Modric. Modric, I'd say, with everything he's achieved in the last 10 years, has to be considered one of the greats now. But that midfield, I don't see that being surpassed in the whole tournament. I think that's the best midfield there. It's whether the others can raise their game and get them over the line.
OK, so you're going for that instead of Argentina?
Yeah, I mean, I am, yeah.
Are you like me, everybody? That's it now. I'm not interested in it. No, really, honestly. I mean, a lot of people have been getting in touch saying they watch it only because we're still got a chance. Now we don't have a chance. Are you going to do something else throughout the rest of the World Cup?
Yeah, but you've got players like Messi that could really sort of turn you know, a bit of alchemy.
It generates some interest.
Great player.
I don't know. I'll go off and make a cup of tea instead, I think. But get in touch, do. Give us your views. Yeah, the asparagus I would now boil and eat. But there you go. Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Have you lost interest now? Are you very disappointed? How are you going to cope? How are you going to get through today? I want to hear.
Anyway, let's bring you up to date with all the top stories and, sobering stuff, I'm afraid. And emergency workers have been searching through the night after the deaths of at least 3 people after this explosion on the island of Jersey. 12 others still said to be missing. Now, it happened at a tower block of flats in the early hours of yesterday morning in St Helier. It's feared that the number of casualties could rise, of course, with those still missing. The operation continuing as we speak.
The Health Secretary has warned the industrial action by nurses will cause significant risks to patients. Speaking to The Sun, Steve Barclay says patients should not be facing more disruption, with the NHS already under pressure. The Royal College of Nursing offered to pause their strike action if he would sit down and enter more pay talks with them.
Around 40 Tory MPs have reportedly urged the Chancellor to cut equality and diversity spending. The Telegraph says that the MPs have written to Jeremy Hunt on the matter after claiming millions in monies being spent on such initiatives. Meanwhile, a Treasury spokesperson says they will continue to identify efficiency savings in day-to-day budgets.
And closer to home, snow and ice has swept across parts of the UK this weekend, with more cold, wintry conditions to continue for days. Areas of Scotland, southwestern England, the Midlands, northwestern England and Wales were hit yesterday, causing travel disruptions. And a Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice is in place for Scotland, as well as parts of Wales and southwestern England until 12 o'clock today. Now, there's lots of news today going on in the field of strikes and politics, basically, because new reports have emerged that the Royal College of Nursing is prepared to press pause on next week's walkouts if the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, agrees to a deal similar to that which saw nursing strikes in Scotland suspended. In other words, they're asking him to sit down and take part in meaningful pay discussions, and then they might press pause on the strikes.
Yeah, we shall see. Joining us now, co-founder of Conservatives Against Racism, Albi Amankona. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Albi, because we've got other reports suggesting that the RCN has attempted some 5 times to get through the door to get meaningful talks going, and they've been rebuffed. And other indications from the rail unions that the government is really playing very hard on this. They don't want these pay deals to go through because of what it will do to inflation.
Absolutely. So the government is in a really tricky situation. So the Royal College of Nursing's argument is that they have not had a real terms pay increase for a number of years. They say that their pay is actually 20% what it should have been because in recent times they've only had pay increases below inflation. So they want a pay increase of almost 20%. The government says this is unaffordable and they don't want to be spending all of this extra money not just on nurses' pay, but also that sets a precedent for other public services as well.
Yeah, I think it's 17.1%, isn't it, technically? That's the sort of bar, which they want a pay increase on top of inflation, which, of course, is running so high.
But whatever it is, the sort of message coming strong out of the RCN, and actually from Mick Lynch too, is that the government are just simply saying no, we will not sit down and talk about this because it's unreasonable. There doesn't seem to be any give from government on this.
No, and ultimately, the only way that this situation is going to be resolved is if there is compromise, and that means that people are going to have to accept things on both sides that maybe they didn't want to accept in the first place. I think most people can understand that a pay increase of almost 20%, 17% or so, is probably unaffordable at this very point in time. But equally, those same people would also think it's completely unacceptable that the government is not doing enough to stop this nurse strike from going on, where almost 100,000 nurses will be walking out on patients next week.
The problem is they've managed to sort it in Scotland. I'm just reading what Unison is saying, General Secretary Christina McKenna. Rather than scare the public about the consequences of strikes, the Health Secretary should be tabling genuine plans and indicating, look, they've managed to do this in Scotland and quite quickly.
Absolutely, and I think this is just another problem for the government because it puts England at odds with Scotland again, whilst this whole independence debate is also happening. So that's also another problem.
Well, that's deliberate as well, though, isn't it?
Well, of course it's deliberate. It's deliberate politicking by the Scottish. But the point is that I think we probably will see the Health Secretary and the union masters for the RCN come together at some point this week, because ultimately I think the public would not accept this nurses' strike going ahead.
Now, the public are fed up with both sides in the argument, really, aren't they? You get that sense of feeling, and it's almost as though the unions have begun to realise and understand that. They're in serious danger of being blamed. The government, on the other hand, maybe not so. They still seem to be so hard-line about it.
I think one of the most striking things for me, Anne, was an intervention that Pat Cullen made last week, where she essentially inferred that Stephen Barclay wasn't meeting with her because she was a woman, and that the RCN was essentially an organisation that was mostly representing female professionals. And I think there's this massive blame game going on between the government and between the unions, and ultimately what needs to happen is they need to get around the table and come up with a compromise that is going to stop these strikes.
But is that going to happen? Because the reality is we've got Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister, who's the former Chancellor, and the diktat was we've got to squeeze the economy, we've got to squeeze things because of inflation. Now, if that is still the case, that's the main government thrust, we're just going to see a war of attrition carrying on, aren't we?
I think we will see a war of attrition, but we have seen some negotiations result in a positive result. So, for example, if we look at the barristers, for example, that negotiation came out with a positive result for the barristers. So I think it is possible to find these compromises, but it's just the government and the unions are going to have to work hard to find them.
Meanwhile, interestingly, Labour have had a few things to say, haven't they, about all of this? Wes Streeting, Shadow Health Secretary, has been saying that a Labour government would deal with this in a different way. We talk to the unions, but we will not let the unions rule, and we will be harder on the unions than people think. And and he's actually sort of said out loud, quite bravely, hasn't he, that the NHS is going to need reform. And that a restructuring, yeah, and an incoming new Labour government would be trying to do that. That's sort of very brave, because previously it's always been thought, never say you're going to tinker with the NHS.
Look, I think it's quite clear to people on all sides of politics that the NHS needs reform. But people have been having discussions about NHS reform for decades and nothing has ever happened. So I think it's very easy for the opposition, the Labour Party, to say, oh, the NHS is going to have to change. We would deal with the unions differently, but not actually provide any detail on either how they will deal with the unions or how they reform the NHS.
Yeah, and of course the other thing of getting staff in to actually fill all the vacancies. They got, 40,000 nursing vacancies at the last count. So, Albie, thank you very much indeed for coming in and bringing us your take on that. And we'll update you, of course, as we hear more from the unions and perhaps the government as well. Who knows?
Yeah. Meanwhile, do get in touch with us with your views. We've got a picture to show you. I don't know if we can find it, but it's of a dog that has sparked a bit of controversy, actually, worldwide, because his owner, I'll just try and find his name, he's called Rizzo, and he's a...
That's the dog,
that's
not the owner.
So, well, no, I think it's the dog, yeah. His owner has been a... There you go. Now, Rizzo is a miniature schnauzer, and he's normally beautifully snowy white. But for Christmas, his coat has been dyed. And
it's the Grinch look,
like the Grinch, yeah. And now his owner said, I did it just to cheer everybody up. When we take him out for walks, everybody comments on it and has a laugh, and it's a bit of festive cheer. He's dyed his hair. He took him to the groomers, who does it with dog-friendly hair dye.
That's very important. Don't try this at home with a spray paint.
No, absolutely not. No, it's totally dog-friendly stuff, apparently, that the dog groomer can use. And it's all for a bit of fun, and, of course, it'll grow out fairly quickly. Is that a bit of festive fun? Should we have another look at him? Is it a bit of festive fun? Or is that, I don't know, is that not really...
Well, the RSPCA have said previously that it could be akin to animal cruelty if you do this to animals.
Well, lots of people online, as you can imagine, everybody has a view online, have said it's pure dog abuse. How awful, poor dog. However, that dog is very much loved, and as his owner said, it's a bit of fun, isn't it? Have you done anything to dress up your dogs?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you can get dog coats, the sort of Christmas outfits, that's
and lots of people dress them up, you know, in Santa hats and everything like that. I don't know. Is it silly? Is it a nice bit of fun? Let us know. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Should we catch up with the all-important weather now? Now it's going to be cold with some cloud and slow-clearing fog and wintry showers continuing at the coasts. Let's take a look at the details.
Down in the southwest, a little cloudier than recently. There's some brighter spells further south. Showers feeding into northern coasts there. Could be wintry at times. And yes, cold with persistent fog, freezing fog. Wintry showers for far southeastern coasts. A few brighter spells inland in the afternoon.
And in South Wales...
Are we going to head across there?
Yep.
Yes, there we go.
In South Wales, yes, it'll be brightest on the western coasts. Wintry showers continue, particularly over hills. Feeling cold, temperatures in low single figures.
Cloudy and, gloomy day for most of the Midlands with a few wintry showers, mainly in the west. Perhaps some brighter spells in places with light winds and temperatures close to freezing. Cold, mostly dry day too for northern England.
Yes, and there's some patchy mist and freezing fog persisting into the afternoon. Brighter, though, in the west. And a few wintry showers skirting along eastern coasts. A band of wintry showers slowly moves southwards through Sunday in southern Scotland with brighter spells behind. Light winds but continuing to feel cold despite any sunshine with temperatures just below freezing.
Yes, scattered showers from Northern Ireland. Could be occasionally wintry at times, mainly confined to the northern coast. Sunnier skies in the west, but still feeling cold too. And as we get into the day, expect more wintry showers through the afternoon. Patchy mist, freezing fog developing later. And that's how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day, I'm afraid.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back.
Yes.
It's 6:24. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark today.
Now, a new trailer for part 2 of Harry and Meghan's controversial Netflix series has dropped overnight. That's the phrase that's being used here.
Well, I think it's because they say it's always going to be a bombshell, which is why they use the word dropped.
Or maybe
Could think of something
they're
else,
just being
couldn't you,
dropped.
that's been
Maybe, I don't know.
dropped.
Anyway, it's giving an insight, they say, into their 2018 wedding, including the memories of their first
Oh,
dance.
don't we all want to know what it was? Part 2, Yawn, will be released this Thursday. Here's what they've had to say.
I just really wanted the music to be fun. Even our first dance, Song of a Thousand Dances, a thousand. I always get it wrong.
1, 2, 3.
All right. You have to know how to moan. Mashed potato.
There you go.
Do the alligator. That was our first dance. It was so fun. It was just spinning like a whirlwind. It was so great.
Now, remind me, this is the couple that didn't want any publicity, isn't it? Is that
Yeah.
right?
Well, they're actually retracting that now. They're actually saying, we never said we wanted privacy.
Yeah, well, they're not getting it. And it's thought that the Prince and Princess of Wales, as well as King Charles, have not watched the series, and indeed that the rift between the brothers may have widened even further.
You know, as the mother of sons, if one of my sons did that to the other, I don't think they would...
What, that dancing? Yeah, quite right.
You'd never be able to forgive. I mean, parents may forgive, and I think for King Charles it's very difficult. But I don't think brothers forgive when they see a betrayal like that. Anyway, that's how I see it. Maybe not the way you see it. Joining us now is showbiz reporter and celebrity talk show host Larry Ferguson for his view. A very good morning to you. Hi.
Well, good morning to you.
Thanks
for having me.
How's it all going down in the States?
It is a very, very, it's a different view here because a lot of the states doesn't know the information that you guys know. And there's a lot of the people in the states that, like myself, that follows the monarchy and knows the history of what's been happening and things. And we know the little jabs that have been said, in the docuseries that maybe the Americans don't know, but the things with the race and the things like that is really, really coming across badly. There are some people that are very problematic in the docuseries that one gentleman that's one of their experts, he ruthlessly attacks the Prince of Wales and the Princess of Wales on Twitter constantly. He has made fun of their appearance. When I say attacks, I don't mean the policies of how that they're doing this situation with Megxit. I'm talking about his looks, saying that they look old enough to be Harry and Meghan's parents, attacking his hairline. I mean, all these type of things. And then anyone who is a supporter of the monarchy or the Queen, they're racist. He's attacked Kinsey Schofield, who is a reporter on GB News. He's went after Angela Levin. He's went after everybody, I think, but Lady Colin Campbell. So and he has 2 defamation suits going against him. So Chris Boozy is one to really watch out for. I don't know why he's on there.
So given all this, how's the programme actually doing in terms of ratings? Are people watching it?
I have not heard too many people in the United States as interested as I thought that they would be, to be honest with you. I was really shocked. I stayed up and of course and watched it. Most of the people that I thought didn't seem interested. They said they started watching it, they got bored because they were wanting it to be more, to be more explosive, which I think it did get to by the third one, the third episode, which but they didn't stick around for that. They didn't. A lot of people that watched it all the way through, they didn't. The Americans did not see any disrespect to the Queen. Well, they didn't understand. The Commonwealth was the Queen's life's work, her greatest accomplishment, and it. And they call it Empire 2.0.
Harry called it that. Didn't he? I mean, I think that's one of the. For a British audience, that was one of the strongest things. It was her rather stupid pantomime-type curtsy, saying that's the way she had to curtsy to the Queen, or that's the way she felt she should curtsy to the Queen, and Harry dismissing the Commonwealth, of which he was president, I think, at one point, as Empire 2.0.
Yeah, having done much work in Africa, of course, with charities.
Which is, those are the things that hurt a British audience, but maybe, as you say, the Americans don't much care about that anyway.
Well, and see, I don't think that they understand what, I don't think they understand what the Commonwealth is exactly.
No.
And I think after, the ones that followed, it all the way through, they didn't understand that the Queen, that she had worked so hard to keep that together. They didn't understand what empire, breaking empire up was and how she helped, to create the Commonwealth and what the Commonwealth actually is. And, she doesn't rule over them with an iron fist. And so she can't make them do things that, so if they are in poverty and things that, there's not a lot she can do. She can't govern them in the same way that, they have a democracy and things. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they ran into trouble in the past where they've had, dictators and things, that she can't help, and they've had to expel people.
So given what you said, is there perhaps an expectation that this next group of 3 that the Netflix are going to release perhaps is not going to engender quite so much excitement as the initial launch?
Well, I think that a lot of people that really did, get sold on it, like, that are monarchists and that are Harry and Meghan supporters in America, and that are coming in lately as well, from the publicity that's kind of dribbling out. I think that a lot of those people are thinking that it'll be more explosive, so they're going to be probably tuning in, and it is possible that the last 3 could do better than the first if Netflix also starts dropping more another trailer that's a little more,
Depends on the trailers now, doesn't it? Look,
Yeah,
Larry, we'll have
it's
to
all
leave it
about the
there.
trailers.
Yeah, it's great for you to join us. Thank you so much. It's really interesting to get your insight from that side of the pond. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And
I've loved you
so
for
we've got.
decades.
It's the question is whether we've got a strong enough stomach to even try watching the next three, which are out on Thursday, which is the same night as Princess Catherine's big carol concert. Well timed, you might think. I wonder. Anyway, it's 6:32. There's lots more to come. Do stay with us. We're going to be looking through the newspapers soon.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 6:35. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. And if you're worried why Mark's here today, don't worry. Stephen's all right, but he's just really suffering from that cold that was clearly brewing yesterday.
Yeah.
So thanks very much for waking up early and coming in.
I'm his stunt double.
That's it. What stunt are you going to do? All right, well, we'll put that to you later.
Yeah. Stay with us for the next 3 hours and
we'll see. We'll
find
think
out
of something.
Yeah,
well, you can get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You might have a good idea. Shall we have a look through the papers this morning? And they're a bit late coming to us, I'm afraid, but I think we've got a few front pages for you. The Sunday Times, of course, focusing on England's heart-wrenching defeat to France in the World Cup. That was last night.
On to the Sunday Express saying au revoir Qatar. I think we pinched the headline actually for our headlines. England losing against France in that quarter-final of the World Cup. And also saying Christmas strikes to cost £4 billion.
If they happen, let's cross fingers. The Sun on Sunday expresses Harry's pain as they, of course, crash out of Qatar.
Trying to hide himself inside his shirt.
I noticed they were all doing that. I've got to ask about that a bit later on.
In the Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph, England's defeat makes the headlines again, while the attention also drawn to Labour's commitment to taking on the health unions, holding back the NHS. Wes Streeting talking about that.
Interesting take on it in The Observer then, saying that health unions could suspend industrial strikes if ministers agree to serious discussions over pay.
But they're not happening yet. Anyway, let's go through all those papers in more detail. Joining us this morning, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater, and also anthropologist and broadcaster, Marianne Ohota. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Especially as you've got no papers yet.
No, but you've been... But there's one obvious...
No pressure.
There's sort of one obvious big story, isn't there, Tom? And that's what happened last night England sort of limping home again.
Yes, so we're going home, football isn't, is the opening line from Josh Clancy's piece in the Sunday Times. And I think this piece, which I've read online at least, very well captures the kind of sense of this is a team that's improved so much. He talks about the team that Southgate inherited in 2016, which was really a bit of a nadir, and now there's that sense that there's so much strength in the team, that they're so dependable, they've come so far, and yet that extra bit of greatness is just not necessarily there.
Taking a penalty.
Yeah. Exactly. Or even Harry, who's very dependable from penalties.
Yeah.
Just at the moment that it matters.
So I watched last night because I think it's one of those things you sort of have to, don't you?
It's a shared experience, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was struck as well, Anne, by two things. Biting your shirt, that's a new thing, right?
Now,
in anguish. Like tearing your clothes, it's like some kind of like Roman thing.
Has Gareth Southgate told them it's not a good look when either there's a big victory or a terrible, painful defeat? What they usually do is roar or something. It's not a good look. And he's told them to bite their shirt instead. But they were all doing that.
I think when you're like caught in the passion of the moment, you're probably not necessarily going, oh, wait, what's my media training?
Well, I don't know.
But maybe it does. Maybe they're
all doing it.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it?
Not on the other sides, I noticed, but I noticed in England they're doing it. And maybe it has been a training.
Maybe they've been
So there's no genetic trait then in footballers that put the...
To chew at your collar in anguish.
But it covers half the face, which, might...
So you can swear without being spotted.
Yes.
Oh, golly gosh.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Honestly, if anyone knows, please get in touch and tell us, could that have likely been a training thing? But it sort of worked.
So did it?
Well, I think so.
Well, it's got us talking.
Maybe he should have done that when he was taking the penalty and put his head over his...
Oh, bless her.
Now,
It's terrible,
Marianne,
isn't it?
you've
Such
looked at
anguish.
what Lord Blunkett has been saying, and I think this is quite interesting. Tell us more. It's in the Express.
Right, so
About these industrial strikes, obviously.
So, obviously...
It's an exclusive they got, is it?
Well, possibly. The principle being that David Blunkett, obviously a stalwart of the Labour Party, former Home Secretary, is being sort of positioned by the Express. Don't forget, it's a sort of like right-leaning paper. And I think at the moment our press are generally... If you read one newspaper, you get one point of view. It's difficult to get that objectivity unless you sit down literally with an array of them or, you look at a bunch of different news websites. So the Express are framing his comments as comparing this period of strikes to the Winter of Discontent, which was that kind of terrible situation in the 70s, 1978 to 9 particularly, when effectively the instability and imbalance of power between the unions and government and working people trying to get on with their lives was such that when political historians look at it, they go, well, that's why the Tories came into power.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they just weren't able to sort of find ground and move forwards with it.
Even when they're asking the unions for pay constraint and pay deals and so on.
Yeah, exactly. But the question is we've actually had 12 years of Tory rule now, coming up to 13. So it is very different because, I mean, from my perspective, one of the reasons we're in this situation is because we've had 13 years of that kind of austerity, that mindset where public services should be cut to the bone. And this is what you reap when you've sown those seeds.
It's still very sensitive because we see Sunak at Prime Minister's questions time and time again going at them about the paymasters, i.e. trying to keep that narrative going about the unions backing Labour financially and getting that message back into the public arena.
I know, and it's been interesting as well, because I know you've already trailed and discussed this, but you're seeing Labour trying to talk tough on the unions as well, particularly Wes Streeting, who has given this interview in the Telegraph this morning, I believe, or the Sunday Telegraph, talking about essentially how the unions are getting in the way of reforming the health service and so on and so forth. I think what you're seeing is, first of all, Labour are just so far ahead that those attack lines, let alone any attack lines, are just not really landing at this particular point. And also because Labour are in that very comfortable position, they've got the kind of latitude to do things which might upset some people in the unions and so on and so forth. So it's just not quite working.
But also, Tom and Mark, I really think that the public aren't that stupid. It's just a very different political and social landscape. The unions don't have the power that they did in the 70s.
Well, we thought so, but they seem to be, bringing a lot of things to a standstill.
I think people are kind of they're a bit more savvy, though, because the members of the unions are the people watching this channel now. They're not this other thing where unions are doing things to us, the public. We, the public, in our context as workers, are members of those unions going, hang on a minute, I can't afford, I go round my supermarket and I choose what I do or don't put in my shopping trolley because of the prices and because my pay is not meeting, keeping up with inflation. And now, we got hand claps on the doorsteps a couple of years back.
But it doesn't pay for the sausages.
What do we get now? You've got astonishing critical underfunding and services are crumbling and people are the most fragile part of that system.
Tom, what are the observers looking at the same situation, obviously, with a slightly different take?
Yes, and talking about the fact that the RCN, the Royal College of Nurses, have suggested that they could pause their planned strikes if the Health Secretary, Stephen Barclay, comes around the table, and just essentially suggesting that the deal that has been offered in Scotland, where there's essentially kind of pay rises somewhere between 5% and 10%, depending on your particular grade, being offered, could be the sort of thing that would lead these historic strikes, first time in the RCN's history, I believe, to be called off. And just pointing out that there hasn't really been any negotiation so far.
I think
they have just
they're
been
saying 5 attempts they've made to get meaningful negotiations, even though Barclay's saying our door is open. But they're saying, well, the door might be open, but there's nothing happening when we're going through that door. Negotiate.
They've met twice, and apparently each time he's only wanted to talk about how the health service can be improved, etc., rather than talking about the issue that
I think on both sides that's not good enough for us, the British public, is it?
It's outrageous. And the truth is, it's kind of... It's just a really backward way of trying to solve these problems that the Tory government are just appearing, or the current government, apparently seeming to kind of just sit put and wait for the public to get to the end of our tether and go, you're ruining Christmas, stop it, go back to work, and there's not enough public support. I think there really is public support because head teachers, nurses, they don't strike willingly, as Tom pointed out. This is historic.
What would you say, though, that obviously we dial back to what Rishi Sunak was saying during the leadership campaign about inflation, and if that becomes embedded in the economy, about how dangerous it is, and the government clearly seeing the pay round as being a danger for pushing inflation up ever higher, and therefore, as a political policy, they've got to try and keep a cap on it?
I think if you're looking at attempting to keep pace with this kind of rapidly accelerating inflation, where you're like, OK, now we need a 15% pay rise, then obviously you're kind of adding fuel to that potentially dangerous fire.
Because that was the criticism of the nurses when they said 17.1%, and people said, you're crazy trying to put that figure.
But it's not binary. It's a nonsense to suggest it's all or nothing. Because if you look at pay rises that MPs get, for example, it's been year on year, very sensibly, keeping up with inflation. They have subsidised food at the House of Commons, things like that. Nurses don't have a place to put their bags. They don't have kettles because the place that they have to pay parking. They don't have a restroom anymore because it's been turned into a treatment room because the bit that used to be the other bit is now an extra bed or a bit of corridor, or it's got a leak coming through the ceiling. I mean, we really are in critical states here.
And that's what Wes Streeting has said.
It's the dark ages.
It needs real reform, and he has, somebody at last has said it out loud, whether he'll stick to it if he ever got into power.
Reform costs money.
Yeah, and reform is
investment.
Very politically dangerous.
Jobs, maybe.
Well, not losing jobs, though, but like creating jobs.
Let's move on. Everybody can get in touch with what they think. To another thorny subject, and that's migration. You found a story about this in The Independent. GPs warning of appalling care in asylum.
Yes. So this is the... sorry, let me find them. So this is the British Medical Association
warning, the doctors' trade union.
Exactly, pointing out that there's an increasing body of evidence that shows that poor housing leads to very poor outcomes in terms of long-term physical and mental health, and that asylum seekers in hotels are suffering from an extreme lack of access to medical services. So things like pregnant women not being able to receive any kind of antenatal or maternity care, children coming into asylum systems where they don't get any dental care. And so when they eventually see an emergency dentist, they're having to have their teeth removed.
Right, it's because they're not registered with a GP's practice because they actually haven't got a home address. Is that the problem?
Because they're in this sort of strange grey area of not being quite here, not really, and so they don't exist in terms of. There needs to be specific provision for asylum seekers.
Tom, you found a story about asylum seekers in hotels, same sort of group, could be very easily recruited by the wrong people.
And another story about how they can kind of fall through the cracks in that sense. So counter-terror officials have raised this potential threat of extremist groups essentially preying on asylum seekers and refugees and trying to kind of take advantage of the fact that, again, they're kind of in a particularly vulnerable situation. Hizb ut-Tahrir, the Islamist organisation, is particularly pointed out here, who have kind of set up gyms and centres and so on quite close to some of the migrant centres in a quite clear-cut attempt to recruit them, effectively. But, you know, you kind of offer...
Who's saying that?
These are counter-terror officials in particular, they're who, particularly in the southeast, I believe, who have said that this is a particular threat. And of course, Hizb ut-Tahrir is saying, of course, we're just here, we're setting up services that all the community can access, so on and so forth. But it's quite clear that this is something that they are pursuing. And as some of the experts have pointed out here, it's a bit of a shift in terms of that particular group, which would often focus on universities, kind of middle-class students, second, third generation immigrants. But this is something, a new tack they seem to be pursuing.
And have we got an indication on, you know, MI5 has been responsible for the terrorist sort of watch on the chatter and so on. Are they saying this to make the public aware, or are they just raising a flag on it? What's the indication?
Well, I suppose it's worth pointing out as well that Hizb ut-Tahrir is not a prescribed organisation, but they have often been the kind of the route that many people took into more, you know, even more extreme organisations, shall we say. But I think it is just about raising awareness about how this could be a particular way that not just this group but others could exploit the situation that we find ourselves in.
Well, you've got a group sitting there who are disaffected and not being probably looked after properly and going to become more disaffected. They're prime targets.
No, completely.
And they're here in our midst.
But also, you've got community organisations of perhaps the wrong sort setting up, providing gyms, places to go, warm spaces, education, social opportunity.
Organisations are the right type doing that.
Exactly. I mean, this is an opportunity for us to... People who come and seek refuge and asylum in the UK want to build lives here. They want to be part of communities. We need them to be part of our communities, not extreme ones that pose a threat to our nation.
One thing we ought to mention, actually, before we move on, I suppose, is we haven't got the newspapers yet because they're clearly very late in printing because of last night's football.
They thought it was coming home.
Yeah. Well, they must have had headlines prepared and then dashed. But somebody we ought to pay tribute to, who I hope, hopefully there will be tributes in the papers when they eventually come to us, is Ruth Maddock, the actress from Heidi High.
Hody Ho.
Yeah. What was the head character called?
It was Gladys Pugh, and if you remember, she was on the microphone. Good morning, campers.
Right, well done.
Yeah.
Well, very sadly, we heard only a couple of days ago that she'd had to pull out of Panto, which she was going to do at the age of 79 in the Princess Theatre in Torquay.
Fairy godmother.
Because she'd had a bad fall. But then she tweeted her followers saying she was doing all right, not to worry about her, she just wouldn't be able to do Panto this year. And then suddenly we heard yesterday that she had to undergo an operation and she's died. And I don't know if we have a picture of her, but I know everybody just hearing her name, Ruth Maddock, will imagine her in that yellow coat.
One of your favourites? Because there was a series, there was sort of Dad's Army, then it went on to It Ain't Half Hot, Mum, and then it was Heidi High.
So I remember watching it as a child, but it being this sort of strange show about the olden days that I didn't understand any of the references.
So it was over your head.
Yeah, totally.
All the cultural references.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're trying to find a picture, are we, Mr. Director? I don't know if you can find a picture of Ruth Maddock. It'd be nice to see it.
I guess we ought to reflect that someone who's still able to do Panto at the age of 79 and keep treading the boards, that's a wonderful way to go out.
Oh, definitely.
You know.
And you know, working right up until the end. I mean, surely that's every kind of actor's dream to be able to continue to do that.
79 is nowadays, you consider that, you know, not old.
Yeah, but...
Oldish, but not old.
So many people saying that, you know, it's a horrible thing to say, but it would have been great for her knowing that she was still being able to do that, and that's how you finish your career.
And a huge favourite. I mean, those old sitcoms got enormous audiences, which is why we all know her so well, I suppose. So it's a chance for a bit of nostalgia, I suppose, if you're watching at the moment and you've got memories of Heidi High. Did you ever go to Panto to see Ruth Madoc perform?
And are you down in Torquay? Were you actually hoping to go and see Ruth Madoc in the Panto there, where obviously they're having to...
We understand they were just about to start rehearsals literally this weekend. They were the various people who were taking part were arriving in Torquay this weekend, getting together for first readings of the Panto. And goodness knows how they're going to replace her, because she's one of those people you might consider irreplaceable. Anyway, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hopefully, when you come back, you might have found some actual...
sort of photocopies. Anyway, thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, and of course, everybody's still thinking of where did it all go wrong last night. We'd love to hear your views as well. Please do get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk. I was fast asleep, as I always seem to be at the weekends now, and woke up just in time to see Harry Kane's penalty. And it was nailed by...
And it wasn't a dream.
And it wasn't a dream. I just thought, I'm just going back to sleep. But I am bowled over by the sheer emotion, though, of people, even back in our newsroom behind us, who just can't believe that it's happened again. I wonder what's going to happen now to all those England fans, of course, who are out in Qatar. We'll be hearing from Paul Hawkins, our correspondent. Yeah, will they be coming back? Would you come back, or will you stay?
And see Morocco win the World Cup?
Well, that's the next fairy tale to try and believe in, I suppose, isn't it? Apparently, this is really cool, this Morocco thing. You know more about football than I
do. They are the underdogs, shall we say, and they've beaten Portugal 1-0, causing a certain Ronaldo to cry.
Did he?
Well, I think he probably realised this is his last moment on the world stage in terms of a major tournament, and to go out in that fashion, they brought him back off on the bench to play, but he couldn't equalise. So I think that's that for him. But anyway,
we've got some tributes to Ruth Madoc.
Oh right. Great.
Les Dennis says, it's so very sad to hear that lovely Ruth Madoc has passed away. She was such a talented and lovely woman. Our thoughts are with her family. R.I.P. Ruth.
This is interesting. Giles Brandreth, a former colleague of ours on TVAM with his jumpers, we well remember. This is such sad news. Ruth was a very lovely person and a wonderfully gifted actress. I was lucky enough, he says, to get to know her through my best friend from school, Simon Cadell, of course, who was also in the cast. In Heidi High, they were irresistible. R.I.P. Ruth Madoc, and thanks for the memories. Goodbye, campers! Exclamation.
Oh, goodbye,
I think
campers.
Simon played... She was obviously always looking up to... He was the camp, the leader of the camp, wasn't he?
Yeah.
In charge. And she was always trying to sort of... how shall I put it politely?
Corral everybody into action.
Well, no, I think, join him in his particular... Yeah, anyway. Love interest.
There she is. At last we found a lovely picture of Ruth. The singer Aled Jones has said, so very sad to hear of the passing of dear Ruth Madoc. A lovely person I was lucky to know. Love to her family.
And Tony Robinson, the actor, so sad to hear my lovely friend Ruth Madoc's passed. She was not only funny and highly intelligent, smart, kindly, a loyal trade unionist, reflecting, and wore her heart on the left. She'll be much missed.
OK, so if you've got any lovely thoughts on Ruth Madoc, or if, indeed, as you were saying, if you live in Torquay, what are you going to do now? Well, you're still going to go to the Panto, aren't you? How will they replace her, though? We'll find out. Do stay with us. For the moment, let's look ahead to today's weather.
Well, it's got some clouds, slow clearing fog, wintry showers continuing across the coast. Let's take a look at the details in the southwest, where it's cold and cloudier than we've seen. There's some brighter spells further south, showers feeding into northern coast and maybe wintry at times.
In the southeast, it'll be staying cold with persistent freezing fog in places and some wintry showers at far east and southern coast. A few brighter spells inland during the afternoon.
Heading out to South Wales, expect clouds there for most, although brightest on the western coast. Wintry showers continuing too, particularly over the hills. Feeling cold, temperatures in low single figures.
In the Midlands, expect a cold and cloudy day with a few wintry showers, mainly in the west. Perhaps some brighter spells in places, with light winds and temperatures close to freezing.
And we'll then head over to Northern Ireland. Well, that's just York there, just to...
Northern England.
Northern England, that's right. So pretty low temperatures there. And we're heading up to Scotland now, where it's going to be a band of wintry showers moving slowly south from Sunday. Brighter spells behind, light winds, but continuing to feel cold despite the sunshine. Temperatures at just or below freezing.
And there in Northern Ireland, sunshine, scattered showers, may occasionally be wintry at times. The sunniest skies towards western counties, still feeling cold though. And that is your weather for today.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Sunday, the 11th of December, and
as you probably know, England are out, sadly. Harry Kane, almost inconsolable, I think, there. A very good morning to you. You're watching Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark. Stephen, not very well today, so Mark has heroically stepped in.
Yes, and he can send me the cheque a bit later. But there we are. Get better soon, Stephen. And get better. Lots of other people are suffering as well, particularly perhaps with a few hangovers after that football.
Yeah. Shall we give you today's headlines, what you need to know today? And England are coming home, after crashing out of the World Cup last night. Sadly, it isn't coming home. The manager, Gareth Southgate, said he was very proud of his players, despite their quarter-final exit.
And it means that France are now the shock outsiders.
Paul Hawkins in Doha.
Question is,
question is, will Gareth Southgate continue as England manager? It's that familiar feeling for all of us as England fans as we wake up to it. This morning, the news that England have been knocked out of the World Cup. We'll have the latest from Doha.
And as Paul was saying, meanwhile, France will play shock outsiders Morocco, who became the first African team in history to make the semi-finals after beating Portugal yesterday.
That man, Ronaldo, going off in tears. In the other news, this is still going on, emergency workers trying through the night at the block of flats in Jersey to find 13 people, or 12 people still missing. Residents reporting smelling gas at three-storey building in St Helier. We'll update you on that as more details come through.
The Health Secretary has warned the planned walkouts by nurses will result in significant risks to patients. The RCN say they'll press pause on strike action if a deal can be reached on pay.
Don't want to alarm you, but it's just 2 weeks till Christmas. So we're in Manchester to check out the festive markets. They've been voted the best in the country.
I love a Christmas market. As ever, you can join in any of our discussions this morning by emailing gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yes, so they're coming home, not it's coming home. England out of the World Cup after losing to reigning champions France, so maybe no disgrace in that.
No, the Three Lions came so close to completing a memorable comeback after going behind twice, but Harry Kane missed a late penalty, which would have forced the game into extra time, though you don't know how that would have gone either, do you? It was so close.
No, that's just true enough. Anyways, we just reflected, France going to face the tournament's surprise contenders, Morocco, in one of the semi-finals. England, though, making a long trip back home.
Now, fans across the country once again were out in their droves, of course, to support the Three Lions, but all went home with a familiar feeling of disappointment.
Our reporter Theo Chicomo getting some reaction, catching up with people and their reaction to that heartbreaking loss.
Great atmosphere. I think that, everyone just was really getting behind the boys tonight. Obviously really wanted to win, but it's gutting that we didn't.
I thought that England were the better team. It was just unfortunate that France got a sneaky goal in, that second sneaky goal, and it's probably a bit too late in the game to crawl back from, so here we are.
I'm allowed to cry every 4 years, mate, and this is going to be the one. We were all over them all game, and just a few little tactical things, maybe having a number 10 down the middle, but yeah, it is what it is.
I'm just really disappointed. I can't believe it. I thought England would be coming at home. I thought Portugal would be bringing it home as well. Sadly, no team.
I know, lots of people inconsolable this morning. Other people a bit like me thinking, I've lost interest now. All the fun is over. But I don't know what...
I don't know. There's still Paul Hawkins.
Well, exactly. And if you're out in Doha, in Qatar at the moment, you were there to support England. What do you do now? Paul, how are you feeling this morning and what's the atmosphere like?
Up this morning and I just had that familiar, just for a second, I was like, oh yeah, we're at the World Cup. England have got knocked out. It's that feeling you've had so many times before, and the what ifs and the could have beens. And really, for that match last night, for on this occasion, it went down to Harry Kane's penalty miss, and you kind of just got a feel for the guy, really. I mean, we had Ronaldo in tears at the end of the game yesterday after Portugal were knocked out by Morocco, who will now go on to face France in that other semi-final. And then you had Harry Kane at the end in tears as well. The England players gesturing the other cameras to kind of look, just give him a little bit of space at the moment because he's going to need it, quite frankly. And no doubt he'll be going over and over that penalty in his head for the rest of his life, but he will get over it. He could have become England's top scorer. He will become England's top scorer at one point, and this is a very young England side. So the question marks really are around Gareth Southgate's future this morning, and whether, not so much should he commit, I think pretty much everyone's in agreement he should carry on, but whether he will commit. Does he have another 2 years in him? Because that's how long his contract with the FA is. It's meant to run through till just after the next European Championships in 2 years' time in Germany. Will he fulfil those 2 years, though? He said afterwards, he was pushed on it, and he said, I'm going to basically take some time out, as I do after every tournament. Do I want to keep doing this? Do I want to go through this again? And I think pretty much, I know the whole England squad and certainly the FA and most England fans will be hoping that he does.
Upset, not just with the fans, but with the team as well, because they really did believe this time they had a chance of going, quite far, that this was a team that was starting to fire on all cylinders and did actually play very well against France.
Yeah, they did play very well against France. I would say the first half, England were... that England turned up against the USA, where they were a little bit conservative, a bit cagey, not quite so sure about where they were going to put the ball, passing it sideways and backwards. Second half, they grew in authority completely, and that's when Harry Kane scored that penalty, Bukayo Saka getting fouled in the area. England looked much more dangerous, and they controlled most of that second half as well. But in the key moments that matter, France came out on top. Olivier Giroud threatened just a few minutes before he did score that header in the 78th minute, and then in the 83rd minute we had that that French foul on Mason Mount in the area, VAR, and then Harry Kane's penalty, and I can't believe anyone would have put any money on him missing it. But, Harry Kane is human just like the rest of us. We all make mistakes, and it wasn't to be on this occasion. But this is an England side that, yes, they've reached the quarterfinals, which technically is a worse result than the last World Cup, but they played very well in that game last night. They're a young side, and they actually played better for long periods of that game. And so there's a lot of optimism for the European Championships in Germany in a couple of years' time, and then the USA, Mexico and Canada in 4 years' time. And a lot of this team will be playing in that tournament because they are so young.
Away from the actual football analysis, what's it like there for the fans? I mean, I can't see any England fans behind you. Are they all staying in bed? Was it desperately sad last night to be amongst them?
Yeah, absolutely. Don't forget, the match finished around midnight at the Al Bayt Stadium, which is a good 45 minutes north of Doha. By the time you've managed to get a taxi or get on the metro and get away from the stadium and come back into Doha or get to your accommodation, it would have been about 1:32 in the morning. So still very, very early, especially if you did manage to have a few drinks before the game yesterday at one of the hotel bars or fan zones around Doha. So it's still early, frankly, here, and it would have been a very late one for the England fans last night. But we've seen a couple around this morning. We asked them how they're feeling, and they just kind of stared at the floor for about 30 seconds and didn't say anything, and then kind of said, "What can you say?" And I think that kind of sums up how a lot of England fans are feeling this morning.
I bet it depends whether or not they'll be coming home now, or will a lot of, if they're particularly keen on football, staying out longer to see it to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say there's still the story of this World Cup now is not France, it's not Argentina, it's not Croatia, it is Morocco, the first African side to qualify for the semi-finals of a World Cup, first Arab country in the semi-finals of a World Cup. They're kind of the flag bearers for the Arab world now. Huge partisan support here in Doha, and the streets will be electric on Wednesday when they play France. And of course, when you think about the history between France and Morocco, that just adds a bit more spice to that tie. So it's going to be fascinating to watch, and if Morocco were to qualify for the World Cup final, it would be one of the great big sporting shocks of all time. And who knows, they can go on and win it. They're playing very well.
Are you staying?
I don't know. That's up to other people. That's not my decision. But the plan is to stay at the moment. But I'll keep you posted on that.
Oh, great. Thanks very much, Paul.
Yeah. Aidan's with us as well here in the studio, Paul. And we have to ask you, what is it about England and penalties?
Well, it's funny. We normally go out on penalties in terms of the shootout at the end of the match.
Yes,
last night it was just a little bit different. But as I said last hour, Mark, if you give your top striker the opportunity to put the team into extra time by giving them a free shot from 12 yards, as in a penalty, and they don't take it, well, I'm sorry, but they kind of get what they deserve, because not many teams get that opportunity. And also, those penalties were granted to England by some really slack play by France. So it's almost not as if they earned it that well. Yeah. They were gifted those, and they spurned the second opportunity, of course.
But was it because it was a second penalty? I mean, people have been saying, he knows the goalkeeper knows him, they're in the same team, so there's all that additional, do I go here, do I go there? And he really did belt it. And a lot of the players have been saying that the ball there is very light, so you kick it and it goes to the moon and back.
Balls are much lighter than they were generally anyway, and we have seen some more penalties. I think we've seen nearly, or just under half of the penalties taken at this tournament have been missed, which is quite astonishing in itself. But the goalkeeper's been saving them as well. But I look at Harry Kane last night in his run-up, in his preparation for the penalty. He didn't do anything different to what he does normally. He's normally very reliable.
Well, there was a lot of palaver over the socks, wasn't there? And I just thought they're a bit like tennis players now. They go through the routine.
Oh, yeah.
Everything's right, you know. And it was.
Pull your socks up, man.
Yeah. But you reckon that's also a bit of a diversion tactic sort of
Possibly.
thing?
I mean, they always say that. Well,
I
I know a penalty expert, and he said to me, if they're walking up and they're looking at the referee, it's a sign they're nervous. If they're looking at the ball, not even looking at the goalkeeper, it's a sign they know what they're doing. They know we're going to hit it. But still, you know, it doesn't mean you can't miss. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had all those failures
we
so
do
far.
assume that they go through penalty drills, that in their training they do actually do these things.
Yeah, I mean, Harry Kane certainly would to be a penalty taker, yeah. But as I say, people are saying, well, you know, we should have taken that second penalty half an hour after his first one. But then, honestly, we'd be if another player missed, goodness me, there'd be some uproar today.
Yeah, why didn't you
give
put
it to Kane? What did he do wrong? He scored his first one, you know, and then people may be questioning his bottle as well, which is I think he was brave to take it. But I do think questions have to be asked in terms of where England go from here. There's been suggestions over what happens to Gareth Southgate in his future. Yeah. We think that he's going to take his time to decide what he wants to do. That to me it conveys a man who's run his course.
And just to look towards what's happening now, the Aidan McGee crystal ball is going for Croatia.
Yes, that's right. I just fancy them for some
Ultimate
reason.
winners.
Yes. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot. They've got a lot to do, but I thought they're very impressive against Brazil. They're just their doggedness, their ability to hang in.
Messi just a bit too slow now to.
No, I don't think that. I think they're over reliant on him in many ways. You know, I don't think it's about pace. I think he's been an outstanding player. Could yet be his World Cup. I've just got a feeling for Croatia for some reason.
Are you in the sweepstake?
No, we're all getting a bit match of the day now, aren't we?
Game of two halves.
Yeah, well,
unless it goes to extra time, of course, and then in case it's not.
No, exactly.
I wonder if you, sitting at home, are like me, you know, you just turned off it now. If England aren't in it anymore, not that interested.
Try being a Welsh supporter.
Yeah.
They lack a bit of devilment. They lack a little bit of something is missing, and they have to find that. Otherwise, they're never going to win.
I think it's called a striker, isn't it?
Oh, come on, lads. Let's move on, shall we? 13 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with the other stories that are in today's top news. And sadly, it's in Jersey. Emergency workers searched through the night following the deaths of at least 3 people following an explosion. The blast happened in a tower block of flats in the early hours of yesterday in St Helier, and it's feared the number of casualties could still climb because there are about a dozen people still missing.
Update you, of course, as we get more on that as it comes through. The Health Secretary warning industrial action by nurses will cause significant risk to patients. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, Steve Barclay saying patients shouldn't be facing more disruption with the NHS already under pressure. But the Royal College of Nursing offering to pause their strike action if the Health Secretary is willing to enter pay talks.
And the weather is big news today. Snow and ice has swept across parts of the UK, with more cold and very wintry conditions to continue for days yet. Areas of Scotland, southwestern England, the Midlands, northwestern England and Wales were hit yesterday, causing a lot of travel disruption. And a Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice is in place for Scotland, as well as parts of Wales and southwestern England today until at least midday.
Everywhere, really, then.
Well, yeah, I read out so many areas there, I thought that's just everywhere, isn't it? Now, there's lots of other news happening, though, particularly in the world of politics, as particularly it pertains to strike action, because new reports have emerged that the Royal College of Nursing are now prepared to what they call press pause on next week's walkouts if the Health Secretary would just sit down with them and agree to some sort of a deal about pay. Maybe a similar deal that saw nursing strikes in Scotland suspended.
Well, joining us now in the studio, our political reporter Olivia Utley to go through what's happening or not happening, of course, maybe the more pertinent question, because it's interesting there are parallels with this situation with the NHS and the railways, where the unions are saying we're trying to get to talk to the government, but they just won't talk. They say the door's open, but then nothing's happening.
The situation with the nurses seems a little bit more fluid than the situation with the railways, because obviously Mick Lynch, the head of the RMT, is very tough on his negotiating stance, and has actually already said multiple times that he wouldn't call off the strikes. Whereas Pat Cullen, the head of the Royal College of Nursing, is sounding a little bit more less intransigent, shall we say, and is saying that were Steve Barclay to talk about pay rises, seriously is the word that she uses, then she would be prepared to call off the strikes. Well, that's what we'd expect in the run-up to the strikes. Steve Barclay says that the offer that he's given nurses of 5% is the very most that we can afford. And it sounds at the moment as though Rishi Sunak is on the same page as him. What Pat Cullen's saying this morning, which is slightly different, is that all that Steve Barclay would have to do is offer a deal similar to the one that's been agreed in Scotland, which was at first they offered 5% and then they offered a flat rise of £2,200 for all nurses.
So for lower paid, it's a higher rate
yes.
in terms of percentage.
Exactly. It works out as something like over 9% for some of the most junior nursing staff. So that's what Pat Cullen is demanding this morning. Perhaps we will see some movement on this week, but it still feels like we've got quite a long way to run.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost indefensible, isn't it, that they couldn't at least offer or talk about the same sort of deal that's been made in Scotland?
Well, we've got a big nursing staff in England, and the government would argue that the offer made a year ago was already quite generous. So the overall pay rise over the next couple of years would end up being pretty high and could end up in quite an inflationary spiral. It's also true to say that the unions are less keen to negotiate in some ways. They'll play harder ball with a Conservative government than with the SNP government in Scotland. So the relationship between those two parties is a little bit more tricky than the other side of the border.
But are we getting an indication that Rishi Sunak, as a former Chancellor, and when we heard the leadership debates, he's talked about the dangers of entrenched inflation, is saying we cannot go beyond a certain figure for these pay deals because of what it will do to inflation. That's the main thing that the government has got to look at.
Yes, that's the main sticking point. And I think the worry that he also raises quite frequently is that were he to agree a higher pay rate for nurses, then he would have to repeat it across swathes of the public sector. It's not like the nurses are the only one who are striking. And so the merry-go-round starts, exactly.
Yeah. There are other things that are sort of bubbling under as well. In that Wes Streeting, Shadow Health, has said if Labour government got in, they would deal with the unions in a different way. They wouldn't automatically just give in, cave into them. And they would want some sort of recognition from the very start that the NHS needs reform. It's quite a brave thing for him to say, isn't it?
It's a very brave thing for him to say, and it's not the first brave thing that Wes Streeting has said. He is beginning to be considered someone on the sort of right of the Labour Party, and he is saying that he himself has been waiting for a long time for cancer treatment. And he has said in an interview with The Telegraph today, quite interesting that he's doing an interview with The Telegraph at all, that he wouldn't allow the hostile, is the word he used, treatment of the BMA, of the government. That he says that they're hostile to the idea of patients expecting a better service. And he said that the NHS must be treated like a service rather than a shrine, which is very interesting and possibly quite helpful to the Conservative government in their negotiations with the unions, because if even the Labour Shadow Health Secretary is suggesting that he wouldn't negotiate, then...
Should we talk about Mick Lynch? Or Mick Grinch, of course, he keeps being called in other places. We have got the strikes coming round the track pretty quickly for this week. No indication that either side is bending on this at the moment. I mean, this really does seem intransigent now, doesn't it, on both sides? It
does seem very intransigent on both sides. It's very hard to see where any sort of wiggle room would be. And as I was saying earlier, unlike Pat Cullen, Mick Lynch is prepared to, I'm not sure if he said it this time, but he has said multiple times before strikes that whatever happens, he's not going to call off a strike.
Because the last time he did it, he said they didn't talk to us.
Yes.
They did suspend action and nothing happened.
Yes. And his tactic at the moment seems to be to sort of drive a wedge between Mark Harper, the Transport Secretary, and Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, by saying, well, Mark Harper hasn't agreed anything with me, but I demand a meeting with the Prime Minister and perhaps we can talk at a different level, sort of thing, which probably won't go down particularly well with Rishi Sunak or Mark Harper, who are very close friends and are operating in hand in hand. Yeah. Exactly. So it is hard to see a possibility of the upcoming rail strikes this week being called off, but perhaps more hope for the nurses' strikes.
But this hard-line attitude from the ministers concerned that we've already spoken about must come from the top, mustn't it? It must be Rishi Sunak has decided and instructed his ministers there will be a complete hard line on the unions. So you say no, don't meet them if they... Yeah.
Yes, it does seem to come from the top. I mean, from Rishi Sunak's point of view, you can see where he's coming from. Some of these pay rises would amount to sort of 19% over a couple of years.
Stop you actually sitting down and talking.
Well, Mark Harper has been talking to Mick Lynch.
Facilitating, I think, was the term he used.
Yes, but I think just the intransigence is now baked in so deeply on both sides. And because there are so many other unions, so many unions at the same time striking, it makes it more difficult for Rishi Sunak to sort of get a grip of the situation. It also makes it easier for the other unions to... We'd never seen a nurses strike before, but now we have it, and it feels that it's sort of enabling each other.
And 4 unions now in the NHS in terms of the paramedics and other parts coming together, that's a coalition or coalescing, if you like, of different parts of the NHS union structure.
Yes, which obviously in the run-up to Christmas is going to be particularly difficult. We're seeing this freezing weather at the moment. We know that older people get iller in bad weather. They have to perform some minimum level of service. Emergency treatment would be fulfilled, but that doesn't include, for example, cancer treatment, or elderly people who've had falls probably wouldn't be visited by an ambulance, which is going to be pretty worrying to a lot of people.
Literally, we've seen them on the pavements, haven't we?
It's scary, and I think that the scare factor is important too. I think there are a lot of people watching at the moment who are very scared. Olivia, thanks very much indeed. In fact, we've already had a message from Henry, morning Henry, who says, it's currently -4 outside. I've had to turn my heating off. I'm a 74-year-old pensioner. My gas and electricity bill for the first 10 days of this month is my allowance for December and half of January. I just cannot afford the energy, despite all the help provided. I think people aren't just lacking in money or heat, they're just scared of what might happen as well. If, for instance, as Olivia said, there's a nasty fall, you call an ambulance and it doesn't
try and stay
come.
warm, indeed.
I was saying this morning to somebody, it was so frosty outside, I thought it was snow. Until I actually got out, I realised it's actually ice on the roads. It's not actually
I mean, it can
snow.
look very pretty in the trees, but my goodness, in terms of trying to stay warm.
My instinct is to stay in now. It is actually not to go out. Why take the risk of going out and driving or something?
Till March.
Really feel like hibernating at the moment, don't you? Do get in touch with us. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Stay with us as well. It's 7:23. We'll be back in a moment, paying more tributes to the lovely actress Ruth Maddock, who very sadly passed away yesterday.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back, 7:27. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Stephen not very well today. He'll be back, don't worry.
Yeah.
Now, sad news this morning. This came as quite a surprise and a shock because the actress Ruth Maddock, who of course you'll all know from Heidi High, has died. She was only 79.
And she'd been rehearsing too for the panto down in Torquay. Well, her agent said she died in hospital on Friday after surgery for a fall that she'd had earlier in the while actually starting those rehearsals.
Well, that's right. And that's what made it all such a shock. Stephanie Tetchy is with us now and she's got more. Hi.
Morning.
Heidi, hi.
Hi.
No, you're too
yes. Oh, am I supposed to? Heidi, hi.
Heidi, ho.
Even though it's sad news, we're allowed to remember her with laughter.
Which is the right way to do it.
She'd like that. But what on earth do we know about this?
Well, it's quite sad, this, because earlier this week, her agent did put a statement out, and also the theatre, the Princess Theatre in Torquay, where she was supposed to be performing, and said that she had to pull out following a fall and that she was going for surgery. But she had reassured fans that she was doing well, she was going to be fine, but it just meant that she had to miss this season. And literally within 24 hours, then we had another statement confirming that she had passed away following this surgery. So it's very unexpected and very much a shock to people who she starred with in her 60-year reign on TV and on
she's one of those people,
screen.
she's always been around in various things. And the picture that they've got here in the Sunday Express is how we remember her. That's how she went to real fame.
Yes,
Maplin.
She was the chief of the Yellow Coats, and she was very much of that era where she cemented her name in British sitcom in that sense. And I don't think she was ready to give up acting, to be honest. She was still, as she was going to be taking part in this, and also next year she was going to be starring in the Best Exotic Hotel.
Oh, really?
As a live theatre tour,
she was going to be doing that. So I don't think she was ready to bow out just yet.
So all we know is that she had a fall. And that she then accepted that she couldn't do panto this year. She was going to do in the Princess Theatre in Torquay. And then she put out a tweet saying, but don't worry, folks, I'm okay.
And I'm going to be back on the boards for the tour with Marigold Hotel.
So hopefully, within the next few days, there'll be more that's, that will come to light about what has happened. But it's still quite a shock and a mystery.
Yeah, and perhaps a bit of a reassessment that, a lot of those TV jokes were a bit of a joke at the time.
Yeah.
We went from Dad's Army to Half Hot Mum, and then it was
Well, they were
Heidi
very
High.
old-fashioned type comedies.
I mean, it was great ensemble acting.
Yeah.
The timing was a bit like the Carry On films. And the other thing that I seem to remember, that even though she was a comic turn, she actually brought a bit of depth to the character. She was kind of very vulnerable and sort of, there was the sort of lovelorn bit.
That's right. She had two sides to it, didn't she?
Yeah.
She had the outward, she was very ebullient. But on the inside, yes, she was a bit more human and vulnerable.
And, at its peak, the show drew in about 20 million people per weekend watching it.
I mean, you just don't get audiences in Britain like that.
And it went on for like 9 years, so you really did create household names from that. And it was from an era where comedy could be comedy, and these characters were really pioneers, setting the trend. Recently she starred in Little Britain and stuff like that, so she was able to transcend the generations of TV watchers.
I suppose the only thing you could say is, I said she was only 79. I mean, nowadays we don't regard that as terribly old and vulnerable. And clearly neither did she.
No, and to be honest, it goes to show by her still taking up different jobs that she was still passionate about acting, and for her to reassure her fans that she was going to be okay. I think she felt like she had very much life in her left.
Yeah.
Should we have a look back? I think we've got a little clip of her in
Just
her
to
heyday.
remind us of the glory days of telly.
Yeah, let's have a little look at Ruth Maddock.
Hello, campers. Heidi, hi! Oh. What a hot day it's been. And what a lot of fun we've all had in the Olympic-sized swimming pool. My, it was crowded. But the water won't be so cloudy tomorrow. Our filters keep going all night, and a lot of chlorine is put in, so it'll be quite safe.
Oh, that's brilliant. Still very good.
Yeah,
isn't
she's
she?
from Llansamlet near Swansea.
Yes.
But she was saying that she'd actually encapsulated all sorts of people that she knew from the valleys to actually get that character. And I have to say, she's got it spot on.
And over the past few years, we saw her on stage. In 2018, she was actually in the Real Full Monty Live, where she actually bared all to promote awareness about breast cancer. She was in the Calendar Girls. So she had a strong theatre career as well. She was in Matilda. So there's been so many things that she's just graced.
And in fact, I mean, as a lot of people have reflected, she was in Richard Burton's film of Under Milkwood.
Yep.
I think.
Oh, she'd have to be.
Di Bread's wife too, I think.
Mrs. Di Bread too.
Yeah, and of course her husband, Philip Maddock, was a great actor, who, if you remember, was in the Dad's Army episode. He was the German officer when it was Don't Tell Him Your Name, Pike.
Hey, you're really good at it.
So they had a real sort of hinterland of comic acting, you know.
Well, it seems sad, you know, it seems like every other week now I'm saying a different legend has passed. And it's not until they pass away we see this body of work, which is...
reassess it.
Yeah, and you remember how good some of it was.
Yeah.
And I know there are a lot of people who say they bring back Fawlty Towers and they take out certain bits and pieces, don't they? We do live in more modern times, but some of those classic comedies were brilliant. Do get in touch.
Comedy was allowed to be comedy.
GBNews at gbnews.uk. It was a bit outrageous sometimes. But, what was your favourite of those really old ones? The really good ones.
Yeah, and let's ask. I mean, if you're down in Torquay and you're looking forward to seeing Ruth and Panto down there, of course, let us know how you're getting on down there. Very sad, but
how do you replace somebody like her?
Yeah, and maybe the rest of the cast will be paying tribute to her in the show as well.
Yes, I'm sure they will be.
Thank you.
So do stick with us. 7:34, much more to come. We're going to be looking through the Sunday newspapers, which, by the way, we've got at last.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Oh, good morning. It's 7:38. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Stephen not very, very well this morning, but the papers have come, which is really nice. They're a bit late, probably because of last night's disaster at the World Cup, but there we go.
Had to change the front page a bit.
Well, I'm sure they must have had two lots of front pages on standby, mustn't they? In the end, said go with that one. So, shall we have a look at them? We'll start with the Sunday Times, focusing on England's heart-wrenching defeat to France in the World Cup last night.
On to Sunday Express, and they have Au revoir Qatar, which we've pinched for our headlines. England losing against France in the quarter-final.
Meanwhile, The Sun expresses Harry's pain as he bites his shirt in agony.
On to the Sunday Telegraph. Again, the defeat making the headline, and it's that word from Gareth Southgate to his captain on the pitch that's the front page picture.
What did he say?
You missed.
Sorry. The Observer says health unions could suspend industrial strikes if ministers agree to serious discussions over pay. You see, I wondered what he'd said to him, and I was just wondering if they'd lip-read him or something. He did put his hand in front of his mouth quite a lot.
Your seat number's 37B.
Yeah, that's right, yeah, right. Get up early, the plane's going home in the morning. Oh, dear. Shall we go through the papers now? Joining us this morning, Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, and Mariana Hotter, anthropologist and author. Lovely to see you both
broadcaster.
Yeah, a number of things.
Yeah.
I dread saying what you are going to tell us about, Tom, because it's in the Sunday Times and it's about Brexit.
Brexit's back. So the Brexit bill is apparently on ice. Senior officials say it won't be going back to the House of Lords because there are the prospects of a deal between the UK and the European Union over the question of the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Ah, right, OK.
So this bill that was passing through the Houses of Parliament, which would essentially allow the government to reserve certain powers to suspend unilaterally parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol if they felt that it was interfering with British sovereignty, that has been put on the back burner because it seems like there is room for a deal, talk of the EU giving ground on the questions of the European Court of Justice, which, of course, is a big red line, certainly for a lot of Tory Brexiteers, and questions of data sharing. So it seems like the aim, particularly with the anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement approaching, is to get this done and dusted before then, not least because Joe Biden himself has made clear that he doesn't want that to interfere with his visits around that time.
And the consequences being, of course, that they've got to get government back in Northern Ireland, the power sharing agreement, and get Stormont up and running again. And this is the thing that's got to be sorted before that can move forward.
Exactly. There's so many moving parts to this, as you suggest, but it's a very vexed political question and particularly difficult at a time when you've got a government that hasn't got a hell of a lot of authority in Parliament or in the country. But it does seem like
it's not bad news, is it? It's sort of conditionally good.
Negotiations are ongoing. I mean, you do always worry about what will be given away in said negotiations, particularly when the government's in a bit of a weak position, but we can only find out in the...
Marianne, tell us about Strep A.
Oh, well,
And
yeah, sorry,
antibiotics.
unfortunately not good news either. So people will be very aware, perhaps, that there's an outbreak of strep A, a bacterial infection that is particularly potentially, normally, a bit of a cough and cold for children, but it can become this. It's the bacteria that is the basis for scarlet fever, which is doing the rounds.
Well. Yeah, this
and you can get
child,
this.
I think, Brighton has died.
Exactly. You can get this invasive version where it sort of gets into the whole body system, and then you end up with sepsis. And unfortunately, 16 children have died from this.
So what about the antibiotics then?
So if you get strep A and you go to the GP and your child needs antibiotics, and it's when the GP says that antibiotics are needed, not needed for all things, because many coughs and colds are viral. But when you do need antibiotics, normally you take your prescription to the chemist, you get your antibiotics, you follow your course, you do it and then your kids, hopefully, OK. Lots of pharmacies get paid £2 something, you know, a few pennies changed from £3 by the NHS to provide antibiotics. And normally it's a sort of liquid syrup for kids or tablets for older children or adults. Pharmacies have come out and said, there's profiteering going on here. There's such demand for antibiotics because there's this strep A outbreak across the country. Wholesalers, so the sort of distributors that supply the pharmacies, have changed their prices. So it used to be about £3, and so the chemist wouldn't be out of pocket for supplying the medicine. They're now being given prices around £11, sometimes as high as £17 for the same medicines. Now, apparently the suppliers, there's no shortage in supply.
And the government has said this. It's trying to reassure
The government has said
people,
there's no delay in supply, but the prices that the chemists are paying, they say that there is this sort of switch in contracts where if there is a distribution problem, then the NHS can go, OK, well, temporarily we'll pay a higher price to get supplies moving.
There's something interesting as well, which I'm just picking up. This is what Professor Camilla Hawthorne said from the Royal College of GPs in terms of the pharmacies. And because of their regulations, they can't dispense something different to what's on the prescription. OK?
Yes.
So if you've got something specifically on that prescription, they can't go for an alternative which may be just as good. And obviously, if everyone's after, you know, a particular type of penicillin...
Well, it might be something like 100 mils at this strength, and they go, well, actually, if you gave double the dose, you could have this lower strength, and they would change the prescribing, you know, what you're supposed to give your
I've had my own pharmacist complain about this very sort of thing.
Really?
Yeah. The prescription says one thing, says, like, take 2 10-milligram tablets. And he said, actually, if I gave you the 20 milligrams, they're much cheaper. And yet they're exactly the same drug.
Yeah.
And it's the way that the pharmacists, they feel they have to juggle to try and get you the best deal, and also the best deal for the NHS. And it's a real problem for them.
Or if they've only got the 20-milligram tablets in stock, they're not allowed to dispense them to you.
They usually just try and ring the surgery.
And the other,
it's difficult.
The other problem, I think, there are increasingly GP surgeries now not dispensing themselves and using local chemists to actually do it.
That's what ours has to.
Yeah.
But they have a little deal because it's a village community. They have to give you a prescription, which you then take to the village pharmacy.
And ours closes at 5 p.m. and isn't open on a Saturday.
But specifically
so don't be in on a Saturday or after 5 p.m.
But specifically to strep A, and I think the broader conversation about how we fund the NHS, how we make sure healthcare actually works for us, and where our taxpayers' money goes. The point where distributors are holding back supplies because they're waiting for this switch to flick so that they get paid more. It's absolutely outrageous because it's profiteering on people being worried that their children are going to die.
Yeah, when the contract's already in place with the National Health Service.
I mean, it's so immoral, and I think it's good that it's getting sort of airtime because we can call it out and hopefully put a stop to it.
Yeah.
Tom, can I spin us forward to the Mirror and the sort of tourism fall-off about the World Cup?
So
what's happening?
So this is an interesting story about what fans who have gone out to Qatar for the World Cup have decided to do during their time kind of in between matches and so on, because of, as we've all heard about, the exorbitant costs of everything from accommodation to beer and so on. So you've had fans who have you know, decided there's a gap between matches, looked up the kind of cheapest flights and gone as far as Nepal, gone to Pakistan, gone and taken pictures of themselves next to Mount Everest before flying back in time for the next match, because of the fact that, you know, if you're in Nepal, a pint costs just under £2 a go. Accommodation is very cheap. They can get there for a few £100s. Return.
And they can go there. I mean,
Exactly. So it's just how the fans who have made it out there are kind of definitely making the most of it and finding this actually probably cheaper than staying in Qatar for
so they're saying in between games, let's just hike up Everest for a quick photo, for a quick selfie, and then come back.
Yeah, so all those people in Qatar at the moment, now that England knocked out, will be...
Well, they may not come straight back. They may decide to do something interesting, which I think says a lot for them.
OK.
No, definitely.
Mail, Marianne. Workers bringing their packed lunch in, which was the origin of the Cornish pasty, of course, for tin miners all those years ago.
Yeah, that's it. You had your savoury end at one end and your jam end at the other, and you held it by the crust because you had dirty hands.
Yeah.
Oh, the olden days.
Absolutely.
Well, now we have Tupperware and other similar brands that are also available of things to put your
plastic
sarnies
things that you
in.
lose the lids to.
Yeah,
exactly.
You do always lose the lids to them.
So during the 2008 recession, there was this massive uplift in things like keep cups, so you could take your own coffee on your travel with you.
Well, and because they charge you now if you have a paper cup.
They
don't they, very
do.
often,
Quite right too. Quite right too. Bring your keep cup. Yes, because, you know, Mark,
Isn't the keep cup made of plastic?
It is, but you reuse it.
Yeah,
so
you
you're not just
reuse
chucking
but
it.
still
It's
a
not
one-off
single
plastic,
use.
isn't it?
It is, but if you use it for the whole of its life, then that's probably good. I mean, if you want to take a pottery cup, then that
Well, the
would
next
be
thing
great.
is bamboo, I suppose, isn't it? That's the thing to do, is buy a bamboo.
Oh, my head hurts.
But this is about people trying to address the cost of living crisis by taking their packed lunch to work. So Waitrose has said that searches for lunchbox, don't joke, it's Sunday morning, 17% up in the past week alone.
Hey, maybe that's the perfect Christmas present.
Yeah.
What, a lunchbox?
A lunchbox.
Flask that you can take hot soup
Made out of
in.
bamboo.
Yeah, that'd be the perfect
with bamboo
sort.
cutlery.
Or,
What
even
would you go
better...
for, Buzz Lightyear or...
You might as well enjoy it.
Maybe we're back in the age of the lunchbox.
Well, you could have
I know what's going to happen now. There's going to be a trade in classic lunchboxes on all these websites where you
I wish I'd
trade,
kept ours.
That's kind of old sort of tin ones.
Postman Pat ones.
Thunderbirds.
Yeah.
Thunderbirds, yeah. I've still got a Tracy Island somewhere up in the,
Have you
in
really?
the attic.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that was a Christmas toy that you had to
I had to queue right round the corner and down the
Too young
street
to remember
outside
this,
Toys R Us.
I was going to say you could flog it for lots of money now. I'm
Probably
sure.
could.
Yeah.
I've got the full set of Thunderbirds.
Really?
You know, 4, 3, 2, 1. I've got two of
Who
certain
was
of them.
Thunderbird 3?
Hang on, 3.
3 was the rocket.
The blonde
well,
one.
that was
Alan.
That was Alan.
Yeah.
He used to get stuck up on the space
That's right.
station.
No, that was John.
That was John. John was stuck up on the space station.
And then Gordon was the one that was sent underwater. But
Tom and I are just waiting for
Grandad
to stop reminiscing.
Virgil was named after
done
the
Heidi
Apollo
High.
astronaut,
That's
wasn't
right.
he?
Thunderbird.
The ones who died in Apollo 1. Yeah, they all were.
named after astronauts
Yes.
in the Mercury and Gemini.
And you can tell how old it was because the only girl, well, there were 2 girls in it. Well, there was Lady Penelope, who drove around in a pink Rolls Royce.
Yep.
And I cannot remember her name, but she was the girl who was on Tracy Island, and she just made everybody cups of tea all the time.
Oh, God.
That's right. She was quite exotic, wasn't she?
She was very exotic.
Yeah.
Cannot remember her name. If you can,
Let us know. Yeah.
Oh, those were the days. But
We're starting to wander.
yes, we are really wandering.
Christmas. What, trees may lose their needles? Are we going to
Yeah.
look at that?
Time.
OK, so...
Because this is very important.
warm start to winter is going to be very perilous for our Christmas trees because normally you get that cold snap and it causes the evergreen trees to basically kind of lock in their needles and stop growing. But because we had that really warm autumn, they were still growing when they got cut down. So if you've already got your live tree, now you got it last weekend or this weekend, it might be bald by Christmas Day because it didn't stop growing when it was cut, and so it will suddenly go, and all the...
So that's even if you put water in the base?
Yeah.
But there are stories about this every year, different theories.
Well,
onto
this
needle
one,
shock.
apparently, lots of distributors got supermarkets and garden centres and all those places where you can go and get your tree to sign a kind of a disclaimer saying if you get complaints because the tree goes bald after a week, it's not our fault.
It's
Don't blame us.
Blame the consumer for not watering it properly.
Okay.
Well, blame the consumer for not waiting until late enough, apparently. They did say, get everyone to just wait and buy their trees, because now, the trees that are getting cut now will hold their leaves till...
Shake the frost off them if you were bringing one in now.
Oh, it'd be so wintry, wouldn't it, to carry
Tom
a Christmas
and Marianne, thank you. Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. But
Merry
we are
Christmas.
continuing. We are allowed to continue talking about Christmas because it is now only 2 weeks away. After a difficult few years for traders and people, where better to cheer yourself up than at a Christmas market?
Yes, well, the ones in Manchester have been voted the best to visit, beating competition from Birmingham, Nottingham and Edinburgh, as our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper reports, having paid them a visit to see what's so good about them.
A healthy squirt of festive cheer, maybe with some sprinkles on top. After a few difficult years, a good Christmas is what we all need. And what's more festive than a Christmas market?
It is very, very interesting to just come. You can do so many different things. You know, you can do your Christmas shopping, or you just have like a nice time hanging out with your friends. And I think it's just a good place to go. And it's something different than going to a restaurant or a bar like everybody does all year long, isn't it?
There are, of course, Christmas markets to be enjoyed all over the UK. But this year, the ones in Manchester have been voted as the best.
So special because it's been going for years and years, and each year I think we bring something different to the table. It's changing all the time with new and exciting food stalls, craft stalls and areas as well for people to come and enjoy.
Since they began in 1998, the Manchester Christmas markets have always been a highlight on the calendar. But what is it about this festive extravaganza that sees people coming back year on year?
We approach it with great enthusiasm, and Manchester people and people in the Northwest just love markets, and they love Christmas markets. 220 Christmas stalls over 9 sites in the city centre, and there's something here for everybody.
For many people, the last few years have proved difficult. But this Christmas, the markets in Manchester are hoping to bring back some of that festive spirit.
We've had a horrible time over the last few years, and there's a lot of dark news in the world, and we really want to cheer up and connect and be with our friends, be with our family, and just try and get through all the problems we've got. And this is the perfect place to cheer up.
But what are the stall holders themselves expecting, given the current cost of living crisis?
We just have to go for it and see what happens, don't we? Like, hopefully people still want to come out and enjoy the Christmas markets and have a nice evening or day out here, so that's all we can hope for.
Because that's what Christmas is all about. Hope. From a very merry Manchester, Sophie Reaper, GB News.
She was out of sync, though.
She was slightly, yeah. I do love a Christmas market. The trouble is, you go along to a Christmas market and you get carried away by the atmosphere and you end up buying things that you really shouldn't.
And they're not that cheap.
No, they're not that cheap. What's the naffest thing you've ever bought at a Christmas market? The naffest thing, please. GB Views, gbnews.uk. There's lots more to come, including, apparently, we're going to be talking to Sam Allardyce, former England manager, about last night. First of all, the weather.
Looking ahead to today's weather, and the UK is looking cold with some cloud and slow clearing fog, and some wintry showers continuing at the coasts. Let's take a look at the details. Cold in the southwest today and a little cloudier than recently, although some brighter spells further south. Showers will feed into those northern coasts and maybe wintry at times as well. Staying cold with persistent freezing fog in places and some wintry showers at the far southeastern coasts. A few brighter spells inland during the afternoon as well. Cloudy for most on Sunday, though the brightest at western coasts. Wintry showers continue, particularly over the hills. Feeling cold with some temperatures in the low single figures. A cold and cloudy day for most across the Midlands, with a few wintry showers there as well. Those will mainly be in the west. A cold and mostly dry day from northern England, with some patchy mist and freezing fog persisting into the afternoon. Brighter in the west and a few wintry showers skirting along the eastern coast. A band of wintry showers slowly moves southwards through Sunday with brighter spells behind. Light winds but continuing to feel cold despite any sunshine in Scotland. Sunshine and scattered showers across Northern Ireland, which may occasionally be wintry at times and mainly confined to northern coasts. Overall, it's feeling cold today with some wintry showers for most. They will stretch into the afternoon alongside some patchy mist and some freezing fog developing later.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Kerr.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Au revoir, Qatar. It's all over for England as the Three Lions are knocked out by France. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock, Sunday the 11th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark. Stephen not very well this morning, so we've told him to stay in bed.
Yeah, get better soon, please. England coming home after crashing out of the World Cup last night. Manager Gareth Southgate saying he was proud of his players despite the quarter-final exit.
Yeah, it's that familiar feeling, isn't it, that we've all had as England fans. The question is, will Gareth Southgate continue as England manager to the European Championships in Germany in 2 years' time? We'll have all the latest from Doha.
And meanwhile, of course, France will play shock outsiders Morocco, who became the first African team in history to make the semi-finals. They beat Portugal 1-0.
In the other news this morning, emergency workers have been trying through the night at a block of flats in Jersey to find people still missing. 3 people dead, but 12 more still unaccounted for. Residents had reported smelling gas at the 3-storey building in St Helier.
And the Health Secretary has warned planned walkouts by nurses will result in significant risks to patients. The RCN say they'll press pause on strike action if a deal can be reached somehow on pay.
And just 2 weeks and counting till Christmas, so we're in Manchester to check out the festive markets. They've been voted the best in the country. Why? We'll be finding out.
And asking, what's the naffest thing you've ever bought at a Christmas market? Love to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And of course, you can join in any of our discussions on the football, on the strikes, anything else. Email us gbviews@gbnews.uk.
So sorry to remind you once again, England are out of the World Cup. They lost to reigning champions France, so perhaps no disgrace in that.
The Three Lions came so close, didn't they, to completing a memorable comeback after going behind twice. But Harry Kane missed that late penalty, which would have forced the game into extra time, although goodness only knows what would have happened then. Penalties. More penalties.
Yes. France going on to face the tournament's surprise contenders now, Morocco, in the semi-final, with England, well, they're making that long trip back home.
Great atmosphere. I think that, everyone just was really getting behind the boys tonight. Obviously really wanted to win, but it's gutting that we didn't.
I thought that England were the better team. It was just unfortunate that France got a sneaky goal in, that second sneaky goal, and it's probably a bit too late in the game to call back from, so here we are.
I'm allowed to cry every 4 years, mate, and this is going to be the one. We were all over them all game, and just a few little tactical things, maybe having a number 10 down the middle, but yeah, it is what it is.
I'm just really disappointed. I can't believe it. I thought England would be coming at home. I thought Portugal would be bringing it home as well. Sadly, no team.
I wonder what the reaction is like in Doha amongst all the British fans there, still in bed maybe. Our reporter Paul Hawkins isn't, though. He's out and about. Paul, what's the atmosphere like?
I would say in the souk at the moment it's very chilled because there aren't many England fans who've woken up yet. Remember, the game local time in Doha finished at midnight, and by the time you got back from the Al Bayt Stadium, you managed to get a taxi. The Al Bayt Stadium being 45 minutes north of Doha. By the time you get in, it's probably about 1:30, 2 a.m. So a lot of them will be waking up this morning. I've chatted to one or two that are wandering around. They're feeling understandably despondent, kind of saying, what more can you do, really? You know, if you're given a penalty, you've got to put it away. It's not Harry Kane's sort of fault necessarily. You know, he's only human, and eventually he's always going to miss one. So difficult for England fans to take it in this morning, especially given that for the large parts of that game last night, they did play really well and they were in control. It's just those specific moments, like scoring the penalty, like stopping Olivier Giroud from scoring the eventual winner. It's just those individual moments that England weren't quite up to the races, but they did control large parts of the game, and they had more shots on target, they had more possession, they had more corners. But as anyone will tell you in football, there's only one statistic that matters, and it's the goals, and that's where they were lacking.
And Paul, is there an added sense of frustration and loss because even within the England camp themselves, they thought they could go all the way this time, that they thought they had the weaponry to do it?
Yeah, absolutely, because as fantastic as Morocco have been and are a really good, tough side, you would have probably made England still marginal favourites, very marginal favourites, to have beaten them in the semi-final, and then it would have taken one last big push against either Argentina or Croatia. So England, you could see a path towards bringing it home, and they did play incredibly well against France, and that's why it makes that defeat a little bit more frustrating. There's question marks this morning over whether Gareth Southgate will continue as manager. He has 2 years left on his contract. The overwhelming feeling is that he should continue, and that what he's done with England, he's taken them, OK, this is a quarter-final. He got to the semi-finals of the last World Cup, but that said, England put in a really good performance, and it was those fine margins where they just need to improve in those key moments. That means that they can overcome countries like France. And so I think a lot of people are hoping that Gareth Southgate will still be there when they head to Germany for the European Championships in 2 years' time, and then Mexico, Canada and the USA in 4 years' time.
I know you've been speaking to some of the fans who are out there. Are they really low, and are they just coming home now disappointed, or are they staying out there to see it to the end?
Most of the fans that we've spoken to are coming home to watch the last three matches of the World Cup from the UK, but one or two probably are staying out here because there's still some great football to look forward to. You've got an incredible semi-final between Argentina and Croatia, and then of course you've got Morocco against France. Morocco surprising everyone by getting to the semi-final. First African team to get through to the last four. Flag bearers for the Arab world, really. Morocco are 2 games away from winning the World Cup. That would be a result of seismic proportions if that were to happen. It'd be a huge shock. And so there's still plenty of reasons to stick around for the rest of the World Cup, if indeed you can afford to stay here for the remaining week of the tournament.
Now, Paul, Aidan here in the studio has gone for Croatia, and we know how good his crystal ball is. How about yours out there in Doha? Who are you, having, of course, followed all these teams, who do you fancy for the World Cup?
Oh, God, that's so difficult. But I want Morocco to win it now, just because it would be such a sporting achievement. So I want Morocco to win it, but I'm going to say Argentina.
Oh,
right.
I want a fairy tale win. If I'm interested at all to stick with it, I want a fairy tale win. It would be nice to see Morocco go through. Paul, thanks very much indeed. Lovely to talk to you again. I wonder how long Paul's going to stay out there. Shall we get a really interesting view now from somebody who knows his stuff? Former England manager Sam Allardyce. Sam, thank you for joining us very much indeed. So, the big question is, where were you when you were watching it last night? What was your reaction and where did it go wrong?
Starting now.
How long have you got? Yes, I was at home. I was at home with my son. We had a glass of wine while we were watching the match, and we're excited to watch the kick-off. We felt like everybody else, and I felt like everybody else. We had a squad that was good enough to win it, had enough experience since our last 2 tournaments, and sat looking at the game thinking, there's no real problems here until France scored what a wonderful goal. So out of the blue, we recovered from that, and then lo and behold, we let another goal in. And of course, our downfall was Harry missing a penalty. But prior to that, the performances were so good, apart from America, that I felt that this performance was good enough to beat France, who are the World Cup holders. But unfortunately, we never got our noses in front. So the pressure for Harry was too much, unfortunately. And we have to look back and say, while we created a lot of chances in previous games, in this one, they weren't quite as often as we would have liked. And of course, we'd have only scored by 2 penalties. So perhaps at the attacking end yesterday, we weren't as good as we should have been.
And was part of that so much attention was paid on trying to keep Mbappe under control, and gaps were left where France could actually get through and score without a penalty? Not
really. I thought that the one thing that England needed to do was keep Mbappe quiet. So I don't think anybody in the World Cup has kept Mbappe so quiet, and that credit has to go to Kyle Walker for that one. Yeah, I think England's play was all too good enough up to the final third, and just in the final third didn't create enough open chances that I expected because of the form of the team that was in. But that wasn't to be. And of course, there's nothing worse than whoever the player, however young or old the player is, if you miss a penalty like Harry did, then it's going to be very difficult for him to overcome. So as much as the rest of the lads put their arm around you and say, look, we're all in it together, you feel the brunt of that when you wake up this morning. So it'll take a while certainly for Harry to get over it, and the rest of the team, because I think we all expected that we would get through.
Sam, Aidan McGee is with us. I know he's got a question for you as well. I know all you football people just want to endlessly talk about it anyway. Go ahead.
Sam, good morning. Nice to speak to you. Would you have been disappointed as a centre-half with the way Giroud was able to get in front of Harry Maguire for that second goal?
2 things, Aidan. One, Harry, but not just Harry, was John Stones. John Stones was far too far past his near post. A centre-half protects the goal, and to protect the goal, you need to be in the middle of the goal when the cross is coming in, not not 3 or 4 yards past the near post. So both of them to blame, really. So if Harry slipped up by Giroud getting in front of him, if John Stones would have been 2 yards, or should I say 2 metres now, stepping backwards, he would have actually headed that ball out.
And that's basics, though, Sam, isn't it? That's basics, Sam, isn't it?
Basics, absolutely. You know, I mean, it's crucial when you're a defender to get all the basics right, and that, unfortunately, for us was a big blow, particularly at the time and how we were playing. Because that goal came out of the blue because we were right on top at the time.
Sam, before you go, we have to ask you about England and penalties. I mean, is it the psychology, or is it that they don't maybe do enough in terms of the practice sessions? I mean, what did you used to do with the players for penalties?
Well, I think the big thing was who fancied taking the penalty.
Right.
Was the big thing, and that would be discussed prior to any game that may result in penalties, and then the opportunity to practice is there. But believe you me, on some occasions, I've had players who want to take a penalty, but when the pressure's come on and asked, they've actually declined, and that is because of the pressure they're under, and because how big a penalty needs to be to win you a game of football. So you can practice as much as you like. It's just having the nerve on the day or on the evening when penalties come along that you're confident in your own ability to take it. And of course, you do one thing and one thing only, is you make your choice on where you're going to put the penalty, and you never change your mind.
Oh, Sam, it's really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you for making time for us. Wish it was under better circumstances, but next time, you never know. Thanks very much indeed. What's the time now already? It's 8:13. Aidan, thanks as well.
Yeah.
We've got to bring you up to date now with the headlines today. And in Jersey, emergency workers have been toiling through the night following the deaths of at least 3 people after an explosion on the island of Jersey. The blast happened in a tower block of flats in the early hours of yesterday morning in St Helier.
Health Secretary is warning that industrial action by nurses could cause significant risks to patients. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, Steve Barclay saying that patients should not be facing more disruption, with the NHS already under pressure. But the Royal College of Nursing offering to pause that action if the Health Secretary is willing to enter pay talks.
And of course, the weather is in the headlines today as snow and ice have swept across parts of the UK. More cold and wintry conditions to continue for days. Basically, it's saying wherever you are, watch out. But Scotland, Western England, the Midlands, North West England and Wales have all been hit. They were hit yesterday, and it's going to go through today as well. The Met Office yellow warning is lasting in most parts until at least 12 o'clock midday.
So we've got these reports that the Royal College of Nursing is preparing to press pause, as it says, on any walkouts if the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, agrees to a deal similar to that, which has seen the strike settled in Scotland. Well, joining us now is political editor of the Sunday Mirror and Sunday People, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thanks for your time. There's a sort of a bit of a gap where we're being told the RCN says it's tried on 5 occasions to get through the door to speak to Steve Barclay, and Steve Barclay keeps saying his door is open.
Yes, and it's been open twice, that they've actually been able to meet him then. But the trouble is that he won't discuss pay when they do. So what Pat Cullen, the General Secretary of the RCN, is saying is, look, if he's prepared to actually discuss pay, we're prepared to compromise. I think there is a realisation at the RCN that the 19% pay claim, although perfectly reasonable because they've lost 20% in real terms over the last 10 years, it probably is unrealistic. And so they're prepared to do a deal. On the basis of that, they're talking about that they've suspended strike action in Scotland because there's been a pay award there of between 5 and 11%. So you can see the kind of area where there is room for a settlement here. But the important thing is that Steve Barclay's simply got to open his door, be prepared to sit down, talk about pay properly, and then there might be a resolution. One can't hold out too much hope because Mick Lynch of the RMT made the same offer to Rishi Sunak yesterday and was snubbed. So if Steve Barclay does the same thing, I'm afraid we are in for these strikes.
Yes, I mean, this very hardline attitude that's coming from these various ministers must be coming from the top as well, mustn't it? They must have all been told, you don't do any bargains, you don't really negotiate with them, you just say no. So it must be Rishi Sunak actually controlling this ultimately.
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. And obviously there are a lot of sort of constraints on the public purse at the moment. However, the idea of a 4% pay offer from the government when you're talking about inflation running at 10% is just not on. So all they've got to do is actually sit down, see if there is room to manoeuvre, have a negotiation, accept the fact that you ought to give nurses more money, that we were all happy to clap for them and bang saucepans for them during the pandemic, and the government encouraged that. But of course, banging saucepans doesn't actually put food on the table.
And when we look at the problems with the NHS, clearly the worry, I guess, would be that whatever is achieved with the nurses, we've got all these paramedics, then the ambulance staff, all the ancillary staff, and that any kind of percentage or figure is then taken on by the other unions.
Mark, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think that's the problem the government faces. Once you've actually made a pay settlement above the 4%, I mean, the 4% goes to all million NHS workers. Once you make a settlement above that for whichever sector, it means they're all going to have to get it. So what the government must do is work out at what point they can raise that 4% and what to, and see if they can then persuade the various unions that is the best deal on the table. The trouble is, at the moment, there's no deal on the table at all.
Yeah.
And time is running out as well. It's only 2 weeks till Christmas, and we're in a very, very cold snap at the moment. So they've got to work quickly, but you just get the feeling that it's not going to happen quickly. Would you agree?
Well, I think that they've got to do something this week if they're going to do it at all. I mean, the 100,000 nurses are going to be walking out on Thursday at the moment as things stand. You've got 26,000 ambulance drivers who are about to follow them. And of course, we've got a ballot coming in tomorrow from midwives and physios. So this is actually across the entire health service. So, Anne, you're absolutely right that the important thing is to get a move on. And at the moment, the government is showing no sign of doing that. But I do think they're going to have to bend.
Gosh, I think a lot of people hope so, in some way at least. On both sides, maybe, are bending together. Nigel, thank you so much for joining us. Great to talk to you as ever. We've got lots to talk about today. Actually, Claire has... no, it's Penny John. Donny John. No, it's Claire, who said, I've just turned on the TV and I'm finding this more light-hearted view of current topics is such a relief from doom and gloom. Well, I'm afraid we do have to touch on the doomy and gloomy stuff at the moment because there's such a lot of it around. But we have got some much more light-hearted stuff, including Nigel's just been in touch. Morning, Nigel, who says it's snowing in Weymouth and has sent us a picture. We'll try and get that picture to you. Yeah. I know you think we're a load of softies in the south because if you live in Derbyshire or various parts of Scotland, you've probably already got snow. Yeah. But yeah, Weymouth is quite south and there's already snow there. Hot news. Anyway, we'll be back in a couple of moments.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store? You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark. Stephen not very well today, so he's staying in bed.
He says. I believe him.
I believe him too.
Yeah.
He was croaky yesterday. He had a very sexy growl to his voice yesterday.
Barry White sort of.
Yeah, absolutely. But he was looking a bit ill, so he's staying in bed. If you're watching, which he probably is, because he likes to keep tabs.
Seriously?
Oh yeah, he likes to keep tabs on what's going on all the time. So, Stephen, yeah, very good morning, and I hope you're feeling much better, and stay under the duvet.
Yes, let's update you on the situation with the health service, because we're now being told up to 15,000 operations set to be cancelled next week because of this first national strike by nurses. That's on the 15th and the 20th of December.
NHS trusts have been instructed to ensure affected patients are informed by Tuesday, with later cancellations only occurring in exceptional circumstances.
Well, it's crossed to Northern Ireland now, and our reporter there, Doogie Beattie, has been assessing how they're actually preparing for it. Doogie, thanks for joining us. What sort of things have they got in place to cope with this?
Well, they're trying to work with the management to try and stagger where the action takes place and have the least effect on patients. But I'm at Downpatrick Hospital, and this is one of many, many hospitals throughout Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland has about 1.8 million people and has about 16 hospitals, 9 of them major, which really shows you they have some of the longest waiting lists here as well. So the problem's not really money, it's how it's being spent. And Unison tonight will at midnight will start their strike action, and places like this behind us will be hit very hard by that. Now, Unison, of course, does not have a lot of nurses in its ranks, although it does have some. It's mostly auxiliary workers and sort of behind the scenes staff, the really important people as well inside that National Health. And I spoke to Rita Devlin out of the RCN and asked her what they were trying to do to ease and exactly what they were looking for.
This is the second time the Royal College of Nursing in Northern Ireland have had to take strike action, and I think you can expect the same, that what we try as much as possible to do is to make an impact while at the same time trying to maintain patient safety. Now that is a very difficult balancing act, but you can't have a strike without impact, and so therefore we will work with our employers to try and in partnership to try and make sure we can deliver a safe strike. So when we put our ask, if you like, on the table, we asked for 5%, which was a restorative figure, because to bring us back to where we were in 2010, and the other percentage was inflation. At that time, inflation was 3%. The fact that it's 13% now is not the fault of nurses. But inflation in itself, if we don't have inflation, then we will in essence still have a pay cut.
Well, you can hear from Rita Devlin, they are really trying to work here to try and put things right. Now, there was a budget set in Northern Ireland last week. Chris Heaton-Harris managed to do that, because you will be aware that we don't have a government here at this moment. And in that, they were able to bring nurses' pay in Northern Ireland up to parity with the rest of the UK. But it's still not enough. But there, as I was saying, it's all about how the money is spent and managed inside the National Health that seems to be more the problem. They seem to use a lot of agency nurses, and that's not a problem, but they use then an awful lot of non-contracted agency nurses, and the Department of Health themselves said from 2018 to 2022 that went up from 27 million to 101 million pounds. That's a total 72.5% spend of the agency's budget. So that will have to be brought under control, and a more focused outlook on the health service in Northern Ireland. Ben Goa did that report back in 2016-17. Michelle O'Neill, who is now our First Minister in waiting, was the health minister at that time, but of course then Northern Ireland collapsed. That government collapsed for 3 years when Sinn Féin walked out of the executive. And then, of course, we had COVID. So these health service workers are now looking for more pay, but there has been no real plan in place for them in the last 4 or 5 years. So you can see their point from where they're coming from. But I think the inflation-busting pay rise that they're looking will probably be out of reach.
And very quickly then, do you just give us an update? Of course, the other aspect that's worrying people is ambulance cover, people waiting for ambulances, the ambulances waiting to get into the hospitals. What's the picture like there in Northern Ireland?
It is actually pretty bad. I ended up attending hospital myself just after Remembrance Day, and as I came into the A&E, I could see ambulances with people sitting in the back end of them for quite long periods of time. But that, of course, as well, we will go back to where we were at with that. It is the management of where they go and how they are brought into the hospital and how they're assessed to let those ambulances go again.
Dougie, thanks very much for updating us of the situation there in Northern Ireland, and of course we'll see what progresses or not in the days to come. Thank you very much.
I think that's true of absolutely anywhere at the moment. You drive around and you go past a hospital, the first thing you notice is lines of ambulances. And those very ambulances should be out and about, shouldn't they?
Because you've got all these stories, these poor people that have falls or other problems, and they're literally out in the cold waiting for the ambulance to come and pick them up, who are obviously trying to do their best.
But even when then they get to hospital, they're still in an aisle of ambulances, probably being treated in the ambulance. It's a terrible situation to be in, isn't it? We've been thinking very much this morning of Ruth Maddock, the Heidi High actress. Sadly, she died yesterday, and it was such a shock because we thought she was doing all right. We knew she'd had a big fall. She's 79, but she was just about to do panto in Torquay. There she is, lovely lady. And she realised that after this bad fall that she had, she wouldn't be able to do panto. But she did tweet to all her fans saying, "Don't worry, I'll be all right." And then the next thing we learn is that she had to undergo surgery and died yesterday. But it's got us being very nostalgic about those amazing old comedies like Heidi High. Andrew says, my favourite sitcoms were, and still are, Bless This House and George and Mildred. They still make me laugh today.
Got a Thames television production, yeah.
Yeah?
Barbara, my favourite series with Timothy Spall, Outside Edge.
I don't know that
Alan
one.
Ayckbourne, I think.
But Timothy Spall is brilliant.
It was so well made, but they only made 3 series of it. It's a shame now that comedy has to be limited in case it offends. Comedy should be taken as a joke.
Yeah,
that's a novel idea.
I know, but you watch something, if you can ever find it, like On the Buses. And
Reg Varney.
It's quite unpleasantly out of date, I'd say, in places.
Yeah.
The things they say about women, and particularly the things they say about anyone who's not white, is just sort of a bit difficult to take nowadays.
Yeah,
it really is.
and
In fact, for many, it's downright racist and awful.
Till Death Us Do Part, Alf Garnett.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then, obviously, I think, was it Love Thy Neighbour? Although a lot of the script writers say they were doing it deliberately to point up the very aspect.
And that's what they did with Alf Garnett, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, he was outrageously appalling, but that was the very reason he was, to show that
Turn
there
it
were
on
people
its head,
with those sorts of views.
Linda,
Yeah,
yes.
go on, talk
Good
about
morning,
Linda.
Mark and Anne. Great programme as usual. Checks in the post. I just want to say that I absolutely love Stephanie in the showbiz slots. How refreshing for a younger person not to slate British comedy and appreciate it for what it was, comedy. I know we're in modern times, and that doesn't mean it's any better necessarily. Comedy programmes were just funny back then. They didn't set out to be offensive or nasty, and people received them in that context.
Yes, I think that's probably very true. They didn't set out to be offensive or nasty. They just were reflecting the time, and it was thought to be funny in those days. There was a really interesting piece written, I think, in one of the newspapers on Friday, by one of the columnists who said, all this talk of wokery and then taking clips out and saying that certain things are wrong and other things can be deemed as racist, who are we to think that our views today are right?
What, in future generations saying...
They may think,
yes, it
I don't
does
know.
move
Who
on.
are we to think that, that our views at the moment are the right views and everything else should be censored?
Yeah, and I guess the real litmus test is that wonderful 40 Towers with Don't Mention the War.
Yeah.
And, I mean, John Cleese will be joining us on GB News. It'd be interesting to hear what his thoughts are now, all these years on. But he has made the point. It was basically, again, picking up that point.
That's what everybody used to say in those days.
And it was pointing out that sort of...
Yeah. It wasn't so much saying don't mention the war, it's the way he marched around jackboot style. Yes. It was, it was interesting then. Donny John High says, after last night's bad news, we need something to cheer us up. Chris Rea has... Is it Rea or Rare?
Oh, Chris Rea, yes.
Has teamed up with Dire Straits to re-release Driving Home for Christmas.
Oh, thank you for that,
Which
Donny John.
was voted #1 of the driving Christmas songs.
Yeah,
and apparently they're going to re-release it.
Mark Knopfler and Chris Rea, really good slide guitarists, so that'd be quite interesting.
Oh, that will be good.
Yeah.
Well, they have to do it quickly.
And Claire, finally? What happened to thermos flasks?
Oh, yes. Well, yes.
Taking your homemade hot drink with your lunchbox.
Oh.
Turning on TV and finding this more lighted-hearted view of current topics is such a relief from the doom and gloom.
I've still got...
You're doing your job then, there we go.
I've got 2 thermos flasks. Do you have a thermos flask?
I have
They're
got
really
3,
useful.
I've got 4 thermos flasks.
Yeah, there you are.
Yeah. And one of those cups that keeps your drink hot.
Well, that's it. They've sort of been taken over by them. But thermos flasks are really sealed.
Put your soup in.
And finally, that snowing in Weymouth picture. I think we have proof that in Weymouth, which is one of the most southerly parts of Britain you could get to, it is deep snow in your garden,
That's
Nigel.
proper snow.
Thank you for that. If it's snowing in your part, do take a picture and send it in when you've still got plenty of time. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah.
More to come. Do stick with us. We'll be looking through the papers.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark, and we're looking at freezing cold headlines, basically. Not very nice, is it? Should we have a look?
Actually, it's a bit more than that. It's snow and ice chaos in the run-up to Christmas.
I know,
apparently.
yeah, but it is in the mail. Let's take a look at today's front pages, shall we? That'll bring me trouble, won't it? The Sunday Times focuses on England's heart-wrenching defeat to France last night in the World Cup.
Well, Sunday Express says au revoir Qatar, or should have been Tatar Qatar, shouldn't it, really?
Oh, that would be better.
Yes. And they are obviously...
reflecting on last
pain,
night.
yeah.
Sun on Sunday does the same thing, looking at Harry's pain.
Eating his shirt as a result. In the Telegraph, England's defeat making the headlines too, but attention also drawn to Labour's commitment to taking on the hostile health unions, as they say, in terms of NHS reorganisation.
Front page of The Observer says health unions could suspend industrial strikes if ministers agree to serious discussions over pay. And that's the big question, I think, facing everybody today.
Let's go through the papers once more in detail with both Tom and Mary Ann. Thank you for being with us once more. And we are...
starting with Tom in the Mirror.
The Mirror.
And
Rishi strikes snub.
Yes, so this is Mick Lynch accusing the Prime Minister of torpedoing talks. There's always been this kind of pantomime throughout all of this kind of whole process, hasn't there? When you've had the R&T and the railway unions saying that really this is a political negotiation, yet there's always this kind of hiding behind whether it's the rail companies or whether it's the ministers at the Department of Transport. And Sunak is clearly not willing to be seen to be kind of sitting around the table for the government to be more formally engaging with this. And if anything is going in the opposite direction, we saw him last week.
Lynch actually wanted a meeting with Rishi Sunak, didn't he? He was actually challenging him as such.
Exactly, and things have escalated to a very high level. Ultimately, of course, this is something which is obviously in Rishi Sunak's intro, but at the same time wanting to maintain that kind of pretense that that's not the case. And if anything, Sunak's heading in the other direction, talking about very punishing new restrictions on trade unions, on the right to strike, going even further than our laws currently, which are pretty restrictive in terms of the European average. So it doesn't seem like Mick Lynch is going to get his wish so far.
If anything, was it a snub, or did Rishi
Sunak
simply say, love to talk to you, but talk to my minister first?
Well, essentially, I think he wants to be seen to be being tough on the unions, naturally. He doesn't want to be seen to be kind of sitting around the table with them. And as you say, from what we saw last week, talking about some of the things that he's talking about bringing in are pretty extreme as far as things like a kind of minimum service sound very non-controversial, but that's effectively kind of compelling people to cross picket lines in order to maintain that service. So it's very significant. But as we all know, for political as well as economic reasons, as Rishi Sunak would see it, he doesn't want to be seen to be giving in at this particular point.
So at the moment, still sort of nothing's happening.
Still that stalemate, definitely.
Yeah, Tuesday, the first strike is coming week, isn't it? Yeah.
I'm sure. Literally 2 weeks ago, I was sitting in this very seat looking at one of the stories in the newspaper that suggested that maybe Number 10 would invite the union leaders round for beer and sandwiches to kind of discuss things like, you know, proper people round a table, and kind of harking back again to how they eventually solved the kind of the 1970s strike eras. And there's a bit of me that wonders whether these stories get kind of leaked out, and then there's a sort of, you know, they take the pulse of the nation to see whether we approve of tea and sandwiches, or whether we approve of a hard line, or whether we approve of talking tough, or whether we approve of meeting nurses and, you know, making friends. And I kind of think that I quite like our politicians to inform themselves of the issues and then make good decisions rather than sort of throw it out to some kind of popularity
all
contest.
the time at the moment, don't you?
Well, it becomes a pantomime, like Tom says.
They keep They keep sort of leaking out little bits or hinting at possible legislation in the future, and you can't help think we're just being tested.
Or is also the case to see how frustrated we get with all the industrial unrest. Will that turn us against the unions? Perhaps the government may think.
So they're playing a waiting game.
A sort of quite cynical view on it. But you've gone for the Telegraph's take on this, Mary Ann, because this is slightly different. This is actually Labour now coming into the sphere of industrial relations.
Which is also very interesting because, obviously, historically, Labour and the unions are aligned and strongly support one another.
And had beer and sandwiches together, as you said.
There you go. So this is Wes Streeting, who is the Shadow Health Minister, and he personally has been waiting for months for scans after cancer treatment, and has said publicly that he gets incredibly frustrated that whenever he talks about the lack of access to primary care, so, for example, how long you might have to wait, how difficult it is to get a GP appointment, for example, he gets positioned as being against the NHS or attacking GPs. And he said, no, that's not what I'm doing. What I'm saying is that we need better standards for patients. It's quite interesting that he's writing in the Telegraph, which is generally a right-leaning paper. The Tory graph, indeed. And
Can you imagine how frustrated he must be? And I'll bet your relatives, knowing that he is awaiting cancer treatment, are probably saying, why don't you just go private?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it?
And as a Labour minister, he can't. Labour shadow.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I have a lot of respect for someone who says, I'm not going to do that, because on principle, I'm against that, because so many people can't just go private and put it on the credit card.
Dennis Healey walk out of your interview when
because I pointed out that his wife had
treatment.
His wife had opted for private treatment, which he said, of course, it was her right to do. But he had just absolutely excoriated Margaret Thatcher for having private treatment on her hand.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's what caused the whole row. But I just think here, you can only imagine cancer. I mean, for heaven's sake, cancer. He must be so tempted to go private, because he could probably have it done within weeks, or have had it done already.
And would that then eventually mean less pressure on the NHS?
Well,
because he would have to have less treatment.
In fact, didn't the chief executive of Bupa say in a television interview yesterday, he said, actually, if you can afford to go private, or you've got private health insurance through your work, you're actually relieving the stress on the NHS if you do.
I think that's a very, very slippery slope, though, because that's like saying send your children to private school, because then it'll stop, the chronically underfunded state schools from collapsing. And you go, well, actually...
Well, that was,
it does, doesn't it?
Well,
that was
no,
part of the
because
argument that the Tory party
of course,
was putting
in the NHS,
on
but
VAT not being taken off.
You're just bolstering a private healthcare, so an alternative, a sort of two-tier service.
It doesn't take away from the state service, does it?
It does if you get a premium per pupil or per patient, because what you end up doing is people with what are described as comorbidities, so people who have more complex, longer-term or multiple chronic health conditions who can't afford to go privately, end up having to wait and be served by an utterly collapsed, utterly underfunded, talent-sapped NHS, talent-sapped education system, and you end up with this kind of... we end up being in the situation with the US.
OK, now you touched on the education system. You spotted something in The Observer as well, Tom, on higher education particularly, the decline of working-class people in the arts.
So this is some really striking statistics here. So it's from the Office for National Statistics. It's pointed out that people from a working class background in the arts and the creative industries, it's fallen to just 7.9%. So is as recently as 1962, it was about 16.4. And there have been kind of shifts in demographics and social classes and so on, but still representing a really quite clear underrepresentation, which you also see reflected in things like journalism and the media, of course. Which
doesn't it then beg the question of the definition of what is working class? I mean, since, all those plays in the 1960s of John Osborne, etc., the whole thing has shifted in terms of social demographics.
I mean, that's very true. And obviously, I think people think back to the kind of eras of kind of 50s and 60s cinema and so on, kind of Saturday night and Sunday morning. Obviously, that world doesn't exist anymore. But at the same time, there are still people who are living paycheck to paycheck, come from not necessarily particularly well-off backgrounds, and yet they're not making it through to the kind of upper echelons of the creative industries in the way that we saw previously. You've even seen kind of popular culture quite colonised by the middle class in a way that we hadn't necessarily seen previously. And you do, I think, therefore, it's not so much of a surprise that when something like Brexit comes along, the media don't see it coming. And one thing they talk about here is that essentially the only roles that exist for working class actors or for working class writers' story seems to be poverty porn on one end. And so there's that kind of discussion of people only ever as these kind of people on the breadline. That's one story you can tell as victims. And the one thing I would add is either that or they're kind of seen as these kind of... They're either the benighted or the bigots, I think, in our kind of conversation. That's another natural portrayal.
The benighted and the bigots.
Exactly. I'm going to trademark that now.
No, I think who is the fabulous black actor in the new Star Wars movies?
John Boyega.
John Boyega, who was brought up in...
Peckham, I think?
Sink Estate in London or something, managed to get into the theatre because his mother was so worried about him joining a gang that she managed to get him interested into one of these theatres in London, and look at his career's taken off. And he said if it wasn't for that theatre group, it was just a pretty, what you might call a working-class theatre, local theatre group, he wouldn't have been the person he is today. So there is, you can always say as well in the arts, because it requires the arts require raw talent, don't they? And you should... Maybe a lot of people think that will always come through. It has to be hungry.
Yeah.
It needs hunger to come through.
Yeah. And
I don't know.
We're talking about the 60s. Of course, it was Michael Caine and that particular generation who really started it. And they were all in demand because everyone was making films with sort of, Alfie and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
I think to some extent, though, there might be just people not in the mainstream, in those big sort of arts entities. They might not be, the ENO or the BBC. They're doing their own thing. They're on TikTok or YouTube.
That's true.
They're self-publishing.
media.
Because they go, those big institutions are utterly irrelevant to me and my group.
Yeah, very
but
true.
that's a shame. That's a...
Make your own TikTok video and just get it out there.
It's a failing of the arts industry, then, because they should be in the mainstream.
Discuss. Right, OK, what are we going to next? You've spotted this... we talk about the health problems, but this is a good health story you've spotted in the Express. And this is a new therapy that's cleared this girl's leukemia.
Yeah, this is amazing. Good news story, you'll be pleased to know. This is Alyssa from Leicester, 13. She was diagnosed with a very, very aggressive form of acute leukemia. And she's the first person in the whole world to be given this genetic edited cell treatment. So what they do basically is they take T cells from a healthy donor. So they're the cells that fight the bad stuff in your body. And Alyssa had a situation where the cancer was basically attacking her own body and attacking her own T cells. So they took T cells from a different healthy donor. They gene edited them so that they had an invisibility cloak, so they wouldn't be attacked by the T cells. They could attack other T cells, and they wouldn't attack Alyssa's body as a foreign entity.
Wow, where was this done?
And then millions of cells, she was given millions of these cells in a transfusion or series of transfusions. Great Ormond Street. Professor Wasim Kasim and Jan Chu, who's the senior research nurse, said that this is next.
I mean, that sounds revolutionary.
It sounds kind of sci-fi, and it's absolutely amazing science that's being spearheaded by teams of people in the UK and overseas.
So no chemotherapy, no steroids.
No, she's had all that stuff as well. No, all that stuff as well. She needs ongoing treatment. She needs another bone marrow transplant to basically start again.
It looks as though it's cured something that before now has been seen as being incurable.
Well, she was at a situation where if this line of treatment didn't work, this radical, revolutionary, experimental scientific treatment didn't work, then she would be offered end-of-life care because that's the only thing that they would have made her comfortable.
Oh, well done, everybody at Great Ormond Street.
So she's not out of the woods, but in terms of it working,
it's a major step forward.
It's absolutely incredible. This technology was only invented, this type of treatment was only invented 6 years ago.
And Great Ormond Street flying the flag, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
And, all power to them, and Professor Wasim Kasim, a consultant immunologist as well.
So if you've got youngsters sitting at home going, I want to do sci-fi science, then this is the kind of stuff they could do.
Absolutely.
And we
really
wish her the very best.
Yeah,
and
enjoy Christmas.
Well, thank you for ending on an upbeat story. That's what we needed, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's it with you, isn't it? We're not going to see you again.
Oh, is that it?
Are you in next weekend?
I don't know. Yes, I think I am.
Depends on the weather.
Don't know whether Happy Christmas anyway.
Thanks.
Happy Christmas anyway. I think we can say that since it's only 2 weeks away. Yeah. And have you done your Christmas shopping yet?
No.
In fact, Christmas markets are very big at the moment, but they are important to maybe support if you're near one, because they've had a tough time, traders who usually do very well at this sort of time of year.
Well, here's the thing. The ones in Manchester have actually been voted the best to visit in the UK, beating competition from Birmingham, Nottingham and Edinburgh. So our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper's been to pay a visit to see what the fuss is all about there.
A healthy squirt of festive cheer, maybe with some sprinkles on top. After a few difficult years, a good Christmas is what we all need. And what's more festive than a Christmas market?
It is very, very interesting to just come. You can do so many different things. You can do your Christmas shopping, or you just have like a nice time hanging out with your friends. And I think it's just a good place to go. And it's something different than going to a restaurant or a bar like everybody does all year long, isn't it?
There are, of course, Christmas markets to be enjoyed all over the UK. But this year, the ones in Manchester have been voted as the best.
So special because it's been going for years and years, and each year I think we bring something different to the table. It's changing all the time with new and exciting food stalls, craft stalls and areas as well for people to come and enjoy.
Since they began in 1998, the Manchester Christmas markets have always been a highlight on the calendar. But what is it about this festive extravaganza that sees people coming back year on year?
We approach it with great enthusiasm, and Manchester people and people in the Northwest just love markets, and they love Christmas markets. 220 Christmas stalls, over 9 sites in the city centre, and there's something here for everybody.
For many people, the last few years have proved difficult. But this Christmas, the markets in Manchester are hoping to bring back some of that festive spirit.
We've had a horrible time over the last few years, and there's a lot of dark news in the world, and we really want to cheer up and connect and be with our friends, be with our family, and just try and get through all the problems we've got. And this is the perfect place to cheer up.
But what are the stall holders themselves expecting, given the current cost of living crisis?
We just have to go for it and see what happens, don't we? Hopefully people still want to come out and enjoy the Christmas markets and have a nice evening or day out here. So that's all we can hope for.
Because that's what Christmas is all about. Hope. From a very merry Manchester, Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Like I said, it's 2 weeks till Christmas. I think we're allowed to say Happy Christmas. But is what Christmas all about this? This is a picture of Rizzo, who's a miniature schnauzer, who is usually a lovely snowy white colour.
However, his mum has been to the dog groomers and she's had him done out Grinch style. Now, before you get really alarmed, it was done by the dog groomer and it was done with pet-friendly hair dye, I suppose. The owner, who lives in America, actually said, I did it for festive fun, because when I take the dog for a walk, everybody remarks on it and thinks, oh, isn't it funny, Happy Christmas and all the rest of it. And she has been very, very surprised to find, although she's had a lot of very affirmative and nice comments, there's been a heck of a lot of real hate coming through at her, saying she's guilty of dog abuse. Do you think that's so? Well, I think the RSPCA are concerned about people that maybe have been using products that aren't actually friendly to dogs, and clearly, you know, dyes and paints, whatever, could be quite, especially with the eyes, quite dangerous for them. So I think check and double check.
Yeah,
with
if you are going to do that,
experts
do it with
do
a dog-friendly shampoo or whatever it is.
Yeah, or just get one of the Christmas jumpers. I know our little dog's got a nice Christmas jumper and a flying jacket to wear on the walks.
And a flying jacket?
A flying jacket.
Oh,
yeah.
What sort of dog?
It is a poodle Frijon
Bichon Frise. Bichon Frise. I've got a Bichon Frise. Yeah,
right,
He's probably got a bit of something crossed in her. There you are. Is it dog abuse or is it just a bit of fun for Christmas, as long as it's dog-friendly? Something else. Yes, talking of Christmas, we've had some lovely snowy pictures in from you. Thank you very much indeed. We had one earlier that was from Weymouth. There we are. That's the one from Weymouth.
And that's about as far south as you can get.
It really is far south. So if you live up north and you think that we're a load of softies down here and we flutter at the slightest thought of snow, that is Weymouth. I think we've got a few more as well, haven't we, from our lovely
Where's
viewers?
next? Let's keep you in suspense.
Because
I'm just going to alert you to what the Met Office is saying, and this might be slightly alarming. Quote, today's been a bit more snow than we were originally thinking,
that's what the
unquote. That's what the experts say. So we're being told today we've got wintry showers on northern parts, Scotland, the southwest of England too, but then from tonight into tomorrow, increasing chances of London and the southeast seeing more in the way of snow. And of course, as soon as it hits London, it's a story.
That's when it's a mega story, absolutely. Do stay with us, we'll have more on that, and strikes and football coming up.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deems & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Au revoir, Qatar. It's all over for England as the Three Lions are knocked out by France. Good morning.
Some.
Yes, I was going to say if it is a good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 11th of December. This is Breakfast on GB News with Anne and Mark. And just in case you're wondering, Stephen's not very well today, so we've told him to stay in bed.
Get better soon. I can say that about England maybe as well. They're coming home after crashing out of the World Cup last night. Manager Gareth Southgate saying he was proud of his players despite their quarter-final exit.
Yeah, it's that familiar feeling, isn't it, for England fans this morning, the morning after the night before. Question is, will Gareth Southgate continue as England manager and see out the next 2 years of his contract? We'll have all the latest live from Doha.
Absolutely, thank you very much. And meanwhile, France will play shock outsiders Morocco, who become the first African team in history to make the semi-finals. They beat Portugal 1-0.
You've confirmed that they have the boxes.
Let's just update you with the breaking news we're getting, where the search and rescue mission for any survivors from a tower block in Jersey has now ended this morning. A dozen people are said to be still missing. The emergency workers had tried through the night to find more after the explosion had left 3 dead. Residents had been reporting smells of gas at the 3-storey building in St Helier.
The Health Secretary has warned the planned walkouts by nurses will result in significant risks to patients. The RCN say they'll press pause on strike action if a deal, or at least negotiations, can be started properly on pay.
And don't wish to alarm you, but there's only 2 weeks to Christmas. So in Manchester, we've been checking out the festive markets, voted the best in the country.
And ooh, yes, big news. Snow is falling in England. I'm sure if you live in Scotland or any of our more northern counties or higher counties, yes, I imagine that you're used to a bit of snow in the winter, but when it happens in London and the south, and we've even had pictures from as far south as Weymouth showing real snow in your gardens, then everybody gets really flustered.
Yeah, but we ought to add that the Met Office saying there is a little bit more than we were expecting.
Which
Close
is really
quotes.
encouraging.
Yeah.
So if you've got any lovely snow pictures, just lean out of the window, take a picture of your garden.
Yeah, not too far.
No, and show us what it's like wherever you're living this morning. As ever, you know, you can join in any of your discussions or send in any of your pictures to gbviews@gbnews.uk. Now, you probably don't need me to tell you by now,
But we're
but
gonna
you
tell
might
you anyway.
do if you've just woken up. England, I'm afraid, didn't do so well in the World Cup last night. They lost. Well, they only just lost, you could argue, to reigning champions France.
Yeah, so perhaps no real disgrace in that. The Three Lions had come so close to completing a memorable comeback after going behind twice. But then, yeah, Harry Kane missed that penalty, which would have forced the game into extra time.
And, of course, then France now go on to face the tournament's surprise contenders. This is the big story now. They're Morocco. And they've done so well and surprised everybody. England, though, of course, are making the long trip back home.
Well, let's go to Doha and our reporter Paul Hawkins there, who is now a Morocco fan and will be following them all the way to the World Cup final and their victory in the World Cup. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, if you speak to the Morocco fans, and there are plenty of them here, tens of thousands of them here, and other people that have adopted Morocco, if you talk to them, they think it could well be going home to Casablanca, certainly. But for England, it's certainly not. Instead, the England fans are packing up and going home this morning. It's now just gone midday, so some of them have been up and about in the souk, which is where you join us right now. And earlier we spoke to Garford Beck. He's the founder of England Fans FC, along with Mark and Jordan. This is how they're feeling this morning.
At the end of the day, we've been knocked out of a major tournament and probably won. Well, I think we'll look back on it. If we would have beat France, we would have went on to win it. But it's game last night is just, it could have went either way. Honestly, the game could have went either way. The whole thing, it was nip and tug between, but you got to take your chances, and I don't think we did that well enough. France were clinical, and now we're going home a week early, unfortunately.
But you know, that's England. We've been here before. We know what to expect. So we've had 3 great weeks out here. Spent it with some great friends. We've had some marvellous weather, some good food and some wonderful hospitality, and I think we'll look back at the photos and the videos and the media appearances and realise we've had a great time, you know. So it's not all negative this morning.
Whether he stays or whether he goes, I'm a bit ambivalent. If he stays, good. If he decides to call it a day, it's okay. It is what it is. He might feel that now that we've been eliminated at the quarter-final, it's a bit of a step back from the previous. Yeah. But, you know, in terms of people going about progression, we got semi-final, then we got to the final of the Euros, and I think people thought the natural progression here would be to win it. And I think there will be regret this morning.
Yeah, not least of all Harry Kane, who's going to be thinking about that penalty probably for the rest of his life, although he's still relatively young. There's plenty of time to make up for it. We've got the European Championships coming up. Speaking of which, will Gareth Southgate see his England contract through to that tournament? And after the game, he said, look, I'm just going to take some time out to think about it and reflect, as I do after every tournament. But generally the consensus, I know Garford was a little different there. He said he was ambivalent about whether Gareth Southgate carries on. But most England fans think that Gareth Southgate should. They're quite pleased with the job that he's done and the unity that he's brought to this very young England side, who have at least another 2 tournaments in them. Germany in 2024, and then the USA, Canada and Mexico in 2026. So there's still you know, life in England, yeah, and it could still yet come home, but not on this occasion.
No, sadly, that's what we say every time, but never mind. It's lovely to see you there anyway. It's like nice to get a feeling of that lovely warm glow around you. Thanks very much indeed.
The halo in the top.
Yeah, I know. I do love seeing shots of what's happening in other parts of the world. Though I still can't get over the amazing feeling of just being able to go live to somewhere else in the world and just see how different things are.
Yeah, especially when we can't get a link down the road, but we can get Doha every time.
So often. I'll tell you what, shall we try a link down the road?
Yeah, why not?
Let's talk to former England international Paul Parker. Good morning.
And he's there, it's worked.
Good morning.
Hello, hi. It isn't such a good morning for people. I know people who are still really very, very weepy about what happened last night. How do you feel it went? Where were you when you watched it? Who were you with?
I was just with friends, to be honest, just in a place called Rayleigh in Essex, just watching there, and everyone was disappointed because we played well. We played very well, and sometimes I'm quite critical about England, but performance-wise, we deserve to go through. I believe that we was the better team, and as mentioned by someone earlier, we just wasn't clinical, and the French were. And the winning goal was scored by a player who wasn't really in the game at all, but yet he he sprung to life when the ball got slung into the box, and they're the moments when when everything pops up in front of him, what could have been suddenly just isn't going to be there at all.
And was that because, for the very, very best reasons, everyone was sort of looking at Mbele and concentrating on him out on the left there?
I mean, Mbappe was always going to be a problem, like Dembele was, because of their pace. But it was Oliver Giroud. They lost him in the box. It was the first time we really saw him in the game, and that was when he put the ball in the back of the net, got in front of Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
I think it might have deflected off of him, but that's what cost us in the end.
What do you wait, we're having a bit of trouble with your sound, but one more question, if you would. What do you think Gareth Southgate should do now?
He's going to go back. He wants to reflect on what happened, but he's got to be there for the next tournament. He has to be there. We talk about, what he's achieved, and he's achieved incredible things for his country. A semi-final he's been in the final. He'll always think to himself he should have gone further in this tournament because of what was in front of him, to play Morocco in the semi-final was a great opportunity. It never materialised. He's got to do it again because there's players there, younger players, to take us forward, and he's got to utilise them in a way that he believes can be the best, and there's some good players to go and do that with.
Yeah, so a bit of legacy maybe to move on. We'll just have one more question, Paul. As we said, we've got a bit of interference on the signal, but just going to ask you, as we've been asking everyone else, what is it about penalties with England? Is it that it's the psychological pressure, or is it that they just don't practice them enough? What happens?
I would just say pressure gets everybody. Harry Kane, everyone saw that when he got that second one, and like myself, again, I'm sometimes a sceptic, I could not believe what happened. I never can always miss a penalty, but I never believed Harry Kane was going to miss a penalty like that. And just to the way he set himself up in the first penalty, he went and moved the ball, and in the second penalty, he started playing around with his socks. It wasn't him. It just wasn't him, and that's what come with it. Really, we see the ball being skied that high, but someone of that quality with a ball at his feet is something that only he can answer that question.
Happens to the best of them. Paul, thank you for that. As we say, apologies for the sound, a bit of a break-up, but great to get to speak to you this morning. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, it's really interesting Paul says that about the socks, because Kathy, I wonder if you're still watching, Kathy, you emailed in earlier. She said, Harry Kane, if he would have concentrated on his penalty instead of messing about with his socks, we might have won. She said, it's certainly not worthy of an England captain. That's a bit harsh.
Oh, ouch.
Don't you think he was just sort of mentally squaring up to the whole thing?
Well, of course, and as people have reflected, he had one that he had to take against his own teammate, let's not forget.
Stressful.
Who probably had been doing penalty practices with him in the training ground for the team, Tottenham Hotspur, for Spurs. So there's all that added sort of psychological pressure that, which way am I going to go? And as Sam Allardyce said, you choose where you go. And he clearly chosen to put it in the top of the net.
Yeah. Just went he went too high.
Yeah, too much welly.
Yeah. As the other one did, the later one with Rashford.
When Rashford was trying to do the free kick.
It's only they said it only missed by about 6 inches.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that 6 inches too many, but it was nearly there, but it went high. And apparently that's what a lot of the...
Well, they have been, not complaining, but observing that the footballs that they've had out there have been slightly lighter than the ones they're used to. So if you really put a lot of...
I would have thought there would be very strict rules about that.
Well, yes, but is it the
different temperatures?
Different temperatures and not as much humidity because it's very dry out there. Maybe that affects the flight of the ball, which is getting very scientific.
It is now, and I'm in danger of sounding too interested in football, really. Oh, dear.
It's a pity the poor viewers.
I know, it's 9:13. Shall we bring you up to date with the rest of today's top news stories? And in Jersey, emergency workers are now treating the scene of an explosion in Jersey as recovery rather than search and rescue. The blast actually happened in a tower block of flats in the early hours of yesterday morning in St Helier. It's feared, though, that the number of casualties will still climb because a dozen people are thought to still be missing.
We'll update you, of course, as we get more details on that operation. In other headlines, Health Secretary warning that industrial action by nurses will cause significant risk to patients. Speaking to The Sun on Sunday, Steve Barclay saying patients should not be facing more disruption with the NHS already under pressure. But the Royal College of Nursing has offered to pause that industrial action if the Health Secretary was willing to enter pay talks.
Meanwhile, weather is top of the news as well. Snow and ice has swept across parts of the UK this weekend. More cold, wintry conditions to continue for days. Areas right throughout the country were affected quite badly yesterday, causing travel disruptions. But then today, a Met Office yellow warning for snow and ice is in place for Scotland, parts of Wales and southwestern England.
Including Weymouth.
Yes, exactly. We've had pictures of snowy Weymouth and lots of snowy other areas too. Now on to another lovely upbeat subject, strikes. And it's only 2 weeks to Christmas. New reports have emerged that the Royal College of Nursing are prepared to, in their words, press pause on next week's walkouts if the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, agrees to a deal similar to that's seen nursing strikes end in Scotland.
Yeah, and there's the rub. Well, joining us now in the studio, our political reporter Olivia Utley with Strikes Desk, we should call it, I don't know. However, this is a very important point, that they've settled north of the border in Scotland, and the Nurses' Union is saying, look, you know, we've done a deal there, please talk to us. And despite Steve Barclay keeps saying the door is open, they're saying we haven't had any substantive negotiations.
No, the government offered a 5% pay rise to nurses, which was rejected by the RCN, and since then there hasn't been any movement at all. In Scotland, what happened is the Scottish Government offered a 5% pay rise as well, which was rejected, and instead they offered a flat pay rise of £2,200, which worked out as sort of 5% for those at the upper end of the scale, but at the lower end of the scale, it was a much bigger pay rise.
Up to 9%.
Up to 9%, yeah. But the government is saying that something like that at the moment is suggesting that something like that would be impossible, because the worry, of course, is that if you get pay rises for all nurses to the tune of sort of 9-10%, and you will have to replicate that across the whole of the public sector, because, of course, it isn't just the RCN that's striking. As we know, there are plenty of other unions striking, and then you get into an inflationary spiral. So Rishi Sunak's holding quite a tough line on this at the moment. Pat Cullen, the head of the RCN, is showing more movement than Mick Lynch, who's being very, very intransigent about the train strikes. So it's possible that we could see some movement, and we could see this nurses' strike averted. We do know how damaging it's going to be, and of course nurses want to avoid that too, but it feels like there's a very long way to go.
And we've also got action by paramedics, ambulance drivers and so on that is in the pipeline. James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, who's just been speaking to various reporters, saying the government's now putting contingency plans in place ahead of the ambulance strikes. I mean, it does look as if the government is digging in on all these disputes. And Rishi Sunak, of course, has made the point that all these pay rises would feed into inflation, which he doesn't want to see embedded, as he said.
Exactly. What he's worried about is this inflationary spiral. And certainly the government is acting like these strikes are going to go ahead, which, of course, they have to do to prove that they're going to hold a tough line on it. The contingency plans at the moment, Rishi Sunak set up this unit to deal with the strikes to help Britain get through these weeks before Christmas. Oliver Dowden is heading that up, who is a very close friend of Rishi Sunak and is well known as a good operator within the Conservative Party. He was former party chairman, Duchy of Lancaster. He knows all the right people. The army is, of course, being drafted in to help should things get to that stage. But the army's not particularly happy either. There are army chiefs saying that, you know, privates on £22,000 are being asked to ruin their Christmases and cover the jobs of people who are actually paid more than them. So it's a pretty unhappy ship that Rishi Sunak's sailing at the moment.
Yeah, and everybody on all sides run the risk of losing public favour, don't they? Public support over this. So who's going to budge first?
Well, yes, it's an interesting question of who is going to lose public favour, because what Rishi Sunak is hoping is that the public will get so fed up with these strikers that support for the strikes will just completely ebb away. And we're already beginning to see that happen. And what he seems to be hoping for is a repeat of 1926, where the TUC called a general strike. And actually the public, well, he's not hoping for that, but he's hoping that the public have the same reaction, where they turn against the unions and actually support the government. But there's the other issue, which is that Rishi Sunak's a pretty new Prime Minister. It's been a very turbulent time for the Conservative Party. He wants to shore up support in the country. And if people look around at Christmas and see that, you know, they can't fly a plane, they can't send their Christmas cards, they can't go to hospital, they can't get an appointment,
then they'll just think this country's broken and it's the government's fault. So he's very worried about that as well.
There is a difficulty, even though obviously Wes Streeting has been speaking, for Labour in how they approach this, because we've seen Rishi Sunak time and time again at PMQs attacking Labour on this link to the unions. They're paymasters, as he keeps saying, even though obviously that link is nowhere near as strong as it was in the 1970s.
Yes, and it's a very difficult question for Labour. The Times did a good leader on this yesterday on how Keir Starmer can either be a friend of business or a friend of the unions.
But not both.
But not both. And Keir Starmer is obviously trying to present himself as this sort of heir to Blair, pro-capitalist, friend of business, competent sort of future Prime Minister. But if he can't stand up to the unions and the country keeps being crippled, that's going to be sort of impossible. Now, on the one side of the Labour Party, you've got someone like Angela Rayner, who's said that the strikers are doing a good job. And then on the other side of the Labour Party, also in Keir Starmer's shadow cabinet, you've got Wes Streeting, who did an interview with The Telegraph today, saying that the BMA, for example, is hostile to the idea that that they should be providing a better service to patients, and has said that he won't sort of kowtow to the unions. So Keir Starmer has that very difficult path to tread. It's a bit of a tightrope, really.
And it's also interesting that Lord Blunkett has pointed out that people so equate trade union problems with a Labour government that all of these problems may lose Labour the next general election anyway.
Well, yes, that is quite possible. Although at the moment it feels as though Rishi Sunak's facing quite a lot of the flack for them. So both leaders are just deeply concerned about how this slew of strikes is going to affect their ratings in the next couple of weeks.
Just something coming in very quickly, just to finish on this. Pat Cullen, the nursing union leader, has just been speaking, saying, I'm saying that the Health Secretary can choose negotiation over picket lines. My door is open. I'm offering conciliation through ACAS. We can start that from tomorrow morning. I won't dig in if he doesn't dig in.
It's positive.
The tone is definitely more conciliatory, but in terms of actual substance, it's not too different to what she's been saying all along, that she is prepared to negotiate. The problem is that Steve Barclay has said that 5% is where he draws the line.
Yeah.
So far, at least.
Yeah, but just stop him sitting down and talking. That's what annoys me. I think, all right, he thinks he's got a hard line. But why can't they sit him down?
Talking.
Yeah. I tell you, it's the first mention of ACAS.
Yes, remember, always used to be ACAS.
It always used to be, they've gone to ACAS, and you used to at least draw some confidence from that they were talking.
Arbitration and conciliation
service, yeah. It's the first time I've heard them mentioned in this whole raft of strikes. Well, let's hope they do their job really well. We'll be back with you in a few moments.
Well, yes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8". My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
We're going to frighten people again.
There's just 2 weeks to go till Christmas Day. And the turkey and the trimmings, have you got them yet? They're meant to be 22% more expensive this year than 2021. So it's no surprise that we're all looking for handy ways to cut back on costs.
How can
what
you
is
cut
and isn't
back on those
expensive.
costs? Yes.
Some things have tripled almost in price, but other things haven't. So we need some really expert help here. And our lovely celebrity chef and oft-times GB News person, Kevin Woodford, is here to share.
Don't get more expert than that.
Oh, my dear.
Yeah.
Share your wisdom.
Great introduction.
Shall we say microwaves and air fryers to you so you can run away now?
Shall I?
You're not great fryers, because everyone seems to be buying these air fryers, don't they?
America in particular, it's storming through America. Well, that would tell you not to buy it, wouldn't it?
So
well,
what
no,
do
we
they actually
honestly, every time we mention air fryers on this programme, literally hundreds of people come in and say that it's the best thing I've ever discovered. But Stephen tried one out and he was really disappointed.
And he's off ill now.
No,
Exactly.
I don't think that's linked. For lawyers watching everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, allegedly,
I don't think that's linked at all.
Allegedly.
But you're not impressed with either.
Well, let's talk first of all about air fryer. I mean, we've got an energy crisis, so people are looking to see, well, how can I actually save some money when it comes to cooking, right? There is no question about it, so let's put this in first of all. Let's get this sort of elephant in the room. They will save you money. There's no question about that, because they use less energy, providing you're going to use them often enough and during a long period, because an air fryer can cost you anything up to £300. So you've got to say, well, OK, where's my saving in that? Over a duration.
Over the capital cost.
Correct. Will it last that long? We don't know how long the thing will last, you know.
Okay.
And an air fryer, basically, it works on a thing called the Maillard reaction, which is basically it's a chemical scientific reaction whereby hot air in an enclosed environment. Imagine a hairdryer, very powerful Ferrari hairdryer, locked in a contained box where no air can get out, no air can get in, massive heat, circulating with a fan. And what that does, the Maillard reaction, is it causes amino acids to change and for the natural sugars to caramelise. Don't go to sleep yet.
This put me off already.
Is this dry air?
It's a dry air, right? So it'll take the moisture out. That causes the caramelisation with a little bit of oil that you need to put on it. The great thing about it is that, yes, there's a bit of a saving, providing the capital cost is worth the duration. And secondly, the other thing which is great about it, no question, is that it's quite a healthy process, because any fats drain down.
Right, OK.
So
this is why people do like it. Right, OK. But you see, I always thought that the way forward was slow food. Cook it slow, and that's the way to keep the flavour, keep the juices, whatever. Not blast it with a Ferrari hairdryer.
Nice term, this, isn't it? But then go on to...
So and other cars are available.
They are, yeah. I'm again. We can list them, can't we?
Don't use them that way.
Yeah.
Right. So then you go onto the microwave. Well, that's another way of saving money. Now, I'm not a fan... This is a joke, really, because I'm not a fan of microwaves at all. But I've written a book many years ago when I was a little bit younger.
When the microwave was first invented.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Young man.
Who's that? Yeah.
That's me.
But, I mean, like the air dryers, everyone's buying microwaves at those times. And you used to even microwave a cup of coffee, I remember. My aunt used to do that.
That's what people use it for.
Yeah.
I do that. I heat up my coffee in the microwave.
Seriously?
I think they're all for things. I mean, I wrote a book only because I worked for This Morning, and This Morning wanted a zany programme. So they gave me 3 microwaves at home, right, and said, now go away for 3 months, write a book and write the series. So I could then, on the series, in 8 minutes, I could make starter, main course, and a pudding.
Yeah.
Now, microwaves for something like a steamed syrup pudding is outstanding because it cooks it in 7 minutes. But I wouldn't use it for anything else. I haven't got one, and I wouldn't have one.
Right. OK. So given all this and how much electricity is costing, and you've got to work out what particular appliance is using more electricity than something else, what about the old-fashioned way of cooking, that you would batch cook and get your cooker going with all 3 or 2 levels going, cooking lots of stuff at once?
Fabulous, Mark. At home, we have a steam oven, a conventional oven, an induction hob, a rice cooker and a soup machine.
And 3 microwaves.
No microwaves.
I've got rid of them. All right, OK.
Yeah. So the conventional way of cooking is the right way to do it. And for me, the saving is in the manner in which you, A, buy the ingredients, and you buy good ingredients at the right price, batch cook so that you've got the oven on, you've got a nice big oven. I mean, in an air fryer, you can get the chicken in and it takes an hour. Well, I can cook a chicken in around about an hour and 15 minutes. In the air fryer, you can't get anything else in, really. Yeah. In an oven, you get the chicken in, you get the potatoes in, you get some roasted vegetables in, you get the apple crumble in. And not only that, on another day, slow cooking, you batch cook lots and lots of ingredients, make several dishes. The same
homemade
as the
soup, maybe on the top.
Well, I tell you what, you mentioned the soup maker, which I think is one of the most fabulous things I've got. I mean, you literally just chuck the ingredients in and a bit of stock, and you leave it to, and it does it all. It's fabulous.
It's the whole thing, and any old vegetables go in.
And then 20 minutes later, it goes beep, 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 and it's done, and you've got soup.
No, absolutely.
But there is also a national conversation going on about heating your kitchen when you've got the cooker on, and you've done your batch cooking and everything else. Do you then leave the oven door open for the hot air to circulate, or do you leave the door closed and just let the what's the term? Not radiation of heat, but where actually you just keep it. Yeah. What's the best way to actually use all that latent heat in your cooker?
There's 2 things to consider with that. If you have an oven which is that high, mid height, right, eye level, and you haven't got children which are 8 foot tall, then yes, when you finish cooking, let the oven door come down and let the hot air circulate. Okay.
Right, OK.
If you've got the lower type, the old-fashioned type, as I call it, oven which is much lower down on the floor, then do be very, very careful with that, because if you've got dogs or animals or children or whatever...
But it also depends whether it's summer or winter, doesn't it, as well? Yeah. I mean, at the moment, it would be wise to, after you've used the oven.
We always do that, Anne, honestly, we always do that. If we've used the oven for anything, we've used it really, really sensibly, because it is expensive to run, through an oven. But we would then bring the door down and let the heat circulate.
I'm going to go off-piste slightly, and I know you don't want to talk about Christmas till next week. Try and put it off for as long as possible. So we talk turkey next week, whatever.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about barbecuing? And actually, if you've got, because lots of people have got these really posh barbecues, actually using it in the winter and go outside and maybe cook your chicken in the barbecue.
I think it's, if you've got the facility, if you've got a nice piece of kit in the garden, all right, and you've also got you covered and the weather's okay and you can be outside, what a wonderful way to spend Christmas, and because for everybody, I'm going to talk next week extensively about the difficulty at Christmas time is that somebody's stuck in a kitchen for hours and they miss out on all the fun. Right. Barbecue is an absolutely perfect way of dealing with that. Absolutely fantastic.
Well, we'll deal with that another time. We are being told that we've got to leave it there. But you're going to come back and talk Christmas stuff next weekend.
Specifically Christmas next
Excellent.
Week.
Kevin,
how much
thank
did you
you
get
so
for
much.
microwaves?
How much did I get for them? I'm not telling you.
Thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure.
And are your books still available at
Well, I don't know whether it is. I don't know whether it
It's
is.
an antique piece, for goodness sake.
We had trouble finding a
Collector's
picture of it. Do stay with us. We've got plenty more to come, including, of course, the latest on the strikes, which might be happening next week and hopefully won't be.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own news from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us. We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
9:38. A very good morning to you. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Anne and Mark.
And new batteries.
Yes, we were losing battery power a few minutes ago, caused a bit of a fuss. But we're fine now, we're right on cue. Now, up to 15,000 operations are set to be cancelled next week. Hopefully not, but apparently it could look that way because of the first national strike by nurses on the 15th and the 20th of December. NHS trusts have been instructed to ensure affected patients are informed by Tuesday, with later cancellations only occurring.
Let's cross to North. Reporter there, Doogie Beattie, to get an update. Doogie, as we were just mentioning, the Nurses Union basically saying that their doors open, they're offering conciliation with ACAS. They could start tomorrow morning. I won't dig in if he doesn't dig in. But clearly, like the hospital behind you there, they've got to make plans just in case it doesn't happen.
Yes, indeed they do. And Pat Cullen is realising that the public sector are paid for by the private sector. And if their wages go up, well, then people like myself in the private sector will be saying, well, my wages need to go up because I'm losing more in tax. And the unions are very much, the clever unions seem to be saying, OK, we can talk about this. I heard Anne saying about the conciliation service, ACAS, yes, many, many years ago. And when we go back to the 70s, we can remember those strikes and how they took place and the cold and throwing another blanket on the bed, etc., in order to try and keep the heating where it should be. But yes, tonight, though, here in Northern Ireland at midnight, Unison will bring their members out on the strike in these hospitals, such as the ones behind me. And of course, Unison's members are also every piece as important as nurses. They are porters. They are people who work in the labs. There is some nurses amongst them, but the main nurses' strike will be the RCN this Thursday. And earlier in the week, I spoke to Rita Devlin to find out what their conditions were that they wanted met and what they were putting in place to stop so much This is the second time the Royal College of Nursing in Northern Ireland have had to take strike action, and I think you can expect the same, that what we try as much as possible to do is to make an impact while at the same time trying to maintain patient safety. Now that is a very difficult balancing act, but you can't have a strike without impact, and so therefore we will work with our employers to try and in partnership to try and make sure we can deliver a safe strike. So when we put our ask, if you like, on the table, we asked for 5%, which was a restorative figure, because to bring us back to where we were in 2010, and the other percentage was inflation. At that time, inflation was 3%. The fact that it's 13% now is not the fault of nurses. But inflation in itself, if we don't have inflation, then we will in essence still have a pay cut. Well, most of the stuff inside Northern Ireland, we have about 16 hospitals amongst 1.8 million of us, and 9 of those are major, but we still have some of the longest waiting lists. And it's really about how that budget is being managed, of course, that is the real problem here in Northern Ireland. Ben Goa did that report that wanted more focused strategies put in place. That was in 2016-17. But of course, the executive was collapsed by Sinn Féin for 3 years, and then along came COVID. But we have become more and more reliant on non-contracted agency staff, and the Department of Health issued those figures that from 2018 to 2022 that went to about 72.5% of that agency budget, and that was from 27 million to £101 million. So I think probably the nurses who do deserve that pay rise will probably think more about how those practices are put in place to save money and where they can then get the benefit of that money coming to them rather than to the agencies.
Indeed. Doogie, thank you very much for bringing us the picture there in Northern Ireland ahead, as you say, that industrial action tomorrow. Thanks very much.
Talking of bringing us pictures, you've been sending some lovely pictures. Thank you so much. Well, it's snowing all over, I think, at the moment. We haven't been able to load them into our computer. We're having a bit of trouble with our computer.
It's too cold.
You know how you do at home. Frankly, the only thing is to switch it on and off again, kick it,
says no.
Kick it round the room a bit. That's what they're doing out there at the moment. As soon as we get those pictures loaded, we'd love to share them with you.
Kicking it around quite a lot, actually.
Yeah, they are. But I've had one picture in from Gary in Evesham in Worcestershire. He said, that's your old stomping ground, isn't it? In ATV days, it was.
Wow.
And he said... But he remembers who the character in Tracy Island was, the girl in Thunderbirds. Right, she was called Tintin. Do you remember?
Tintin, well done.
She was the sort of glamour-puss.
Yeah, and her dad was also sort of Jeff Tracy's camp, wasn't he?
Sort of butler-type person,
right,
yeah. And Tintin was going to marry, or she was very clearly very close to Alan.
That's right.
Who was Thunderbird 3?
3, yes, the rocket, yeah. Yeah, and Lady Penelope's driver was
Parker.
Yes,
Parker.
the lady.
Yes, yeah.
Yes,
Oh, that's
the lady.
my goodness. You watched it almost as much
yeah.
as me. I used to love Thunderbirds.
Oh.
Absolutely loved it. And then
Gary
it
Anderson's,
did its revival.
all his Fireball XL5 supercar.
Yeah, supercar.
And then it went on to Joe 90, which wasn't quite as good.
Not quite as good, but a lot of them were. Stingray.
Yeah, Stingray, yes.
Stingray was
Troy
brilliant.
Tempest and Phones.
Yeah.
There we go. Happy days.
Who was Troy Tempest's girlfriend, the mermaid?
Marina.
Marina.
And they even wrote a song about it.
And somebody quite famous sang the song, like Tony Bennett, wasn't it? It was.
I don't think it was.
It was a big deal.
Yeah. Now that's a good quiz question.
Yeah.
Who sang the song Marina in Stingray? That's got you going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why we got onto the subject of Thunderbirds.
We got a bit off piece, didn't we?
We did, but it's good fun. It's the sort of thing you think about at this time of year.
Yes, because it's Christmas, which is only 2 weeks away.
Yes.
And of course, after a difficult couple of years, better to cheer yourself up at a Christmas market.
Yeah, now the ones in Manchester have apparently been hailed as the best to visit in the UK, if you can get there, beating competition from Birmingham, Nottingham and Edinburgh. So our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, went to find out why.
A healthy squirt of festive cheer, maybe with some sprinkles on top. After a few difficult years, a good Christmas is what we all need. And what's more festive than a Christmas market?
It is very, very interesting to just come. You can do so many different things. You know, you can do your Christmas shopping, or you just have like a nice time hanging out with your friends. And I think it's just a good place to go. And it's something different than going to a restaurant or a bar like everybody does all year long, isn't it?
There are, of course, Christmas markets to be enjoyed all over the UK. But this year, the ones in Manchester have been voted as the best.
So special because it's been going for years and years, and each year I think we bring something different to the table. It's changing all the time with new and exciting food stalls, craft stalls and areas as well for people to come and enjoy.
Since they began in 1998, the Manchester Christmas markets have always been a highlight on the calendar. But what is it about this festive extravaganza that sees people coming back year on year?
We approach it with great enthusiasm, and Manchester people and people in the North West just love markets, and they love Christmas markets. 220 Christmas stalls, over 9 sites in the city centre, and there's something here for everybody.
For many people, the last few years have proved difficult. But this Christmas, the markets in Manchester are hoping to bring back some of that festive spirit.
We've had a horrible time over the last few years, and there's a lot of dark news in the world, and we really want to cheer up and connect and be with our friends, be with our family, and just try and get through all the problems we've got. And this is the perfect place to cheer up.
But what are the stall holders themselves expecting, given the current cost of living crisis?
We just have to go for it and see what happens, don't we? Like, hopefully people still want to come out and enjoy the Christmas markets and have a nice evening or day out here, so that's all we can hope for.
Because that's what Christmas is all about. Hope. From a very merry Manchester, Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Still out of sync.
Yes, it was. It's very
ho,
funny
ho,
that,
ho.
though, actually.
Ho, ho, ho.
No, it's an interesting time of year, isn't it? Because it's a time of year that we sort of, we idolise or idealise, and, you don't. Do you not?
I find it really
Are
stressful.
You a Grinch?
Yeah.
I was going to say it can be very, very stressful. Who gets the most stressed out in the family? Is it always...
Dad.
Well, no, I would have said exactly the opposite.
You would, yeah. However, let's talk about festive faux pas, because there are plenty of them.
Yes.
Many of you wondering, actually, what should you be doing or not doing? And here to tell us, the way ahead, Diana Mather, who is an expert at with a place setting as well.
I brought
You've come
everything
prepared.
with me. I have indeed. Well, I think the festive faux pas can be drinking too much on Christmas Day, especially if you're going to perhaps your partner's family you haven't been before. Sometimes people get nervous and just drink that too much and then perhaps say things that they shouldn't, or not to eat the food. Yes. I mean, for instance, I am gluten-free, so I have to be careful. I usually take my own Christmas pudding. But if not, I would have a little bit. Because, you know, if somebody's got their special recipe or whatever, then you should actually try and eat it if you can.
And do you offer to do the washing up?
Always.
Right, OK.
Yes.
There we are.
I don't bring the marigolds, but I do offer to do the washing. But most people say, no, please don't bother. So never insist. Because if you're like me and your kitchen looks like, you know, a crime scene, then you don't want anyone in there. So you'd rather do it yourself. So always offer, but don't insist on doing it.
What about, I mean, I find this, because I'm always trying to engineer, by the way, Stephanie's joined us. I'm always trying to sort of engineer that everybody knows what their job is.
Yeah.
They can volunteer for it, but they ought to know that once they've volunteered, that's their job. So it's sort of delegating chores?
I think so, absolutely. If you're hosting Christmas, then delegation is absolutely the thing. I'm going to my daughter-in-law's, my son, and we'll have my French side there as well. So there'll be at least 12 of us, and we will all be given jobs to do. And that means that it's not just such a stress on usually, it has to be said, the mother.
And what time does one serve lunch?
Well, we always used to have it after the Queen, now King.
Us too.
Right.
Yes.
Yes. Because the other thing is, if you're getting up and you're unwrapping your presents, doing all that, trying then to get lunch together by 1 o'clock, whatever, it's just crazy, isn't it?
It is.
If you're traditional and you try to fit in a quick visit to a church or something first, you just can't do everything in the morning, can you?
You can't. And I think Christmas should be stress-free. It's laid back, but everything has to be sort of ready, if you like. So the other thing, though, if you're not going to have lunch till, say, 4, make sure that people are drinking a glass of champagne. By the way, that's the way you hold it.
Is it?
Never by the stem, because never by the glass, because you're warming it up.
Warming the drink, yeah.
So make sure there are canopies, smoked salmon or whatever you might like, so that you're just providing the
because
alcohol.
That's the other thing I find is you find half the family hanging back and you say, I'm hungry, when's it going to be ready? So you've got to have things to eat.
Unnecessary pressure, definitely. And I do agree it should be a joint effort, because I just don't like those family members who just lounge about, who expect to be waited on hand and foot. I feel like everyone...
You're making a point here by any chance?
I am. No digs at anyone in my family, but I do believe it should be a joint effort.
Right.
But I was going to ask, what is your etiquette about mobile phones? Because that's my big bugbear about the Christmas day.
I think, well, they're never on at the table. You never have a phone at the table, absolutely not. And in fact, switch them on to silent.
Yeah, I agree.
And the other thing is, don't send a lot of Christmas greetings or make Christmas phone calls on the day.
Oh, really?
Because if you're going to do it first thing, and the best thing is texts, because then people don't have to answer. Otherwise, you're trying to cook the blinking sprouts and not overcook them, and somebody's phoning. It's again,
yes, and you're interrupting their Christmas.
Yes, exactly so. Exactly so.
Right, so radio silence then.
Well, I won't. I have a family of young men, and they are dictate their phones.
Very different.
No, they're not. But so what's your? I mean, Stephanie asked me this when you walked in. What is your worst faux pas? What is the nightmare? And I would say I used to think it was a very sophisticated way to start Christmas Day with champagne. It's not in our family because people get a little bit too tipsy too early, and then they start to have arguments. And then you wish you'd never given them champagne. What's yours?
Bucks Fizz. Do it with the orange.
Yes, I agree. Bucks Fizz, definitely.
That waters it down a bit.
Smoked salmon with a scrambled egg on toast and a Bucks Fizz. There we
A
go.
late breakfast, a nice...
absolutely. Brunch,
yes, and it gets you into that festive start, as you say, without too much
If you're doing that, what do you then serve with the turkey for the main event?
Then I would say white or red wine, depending on choice, because turkey's a sort of strong enough meat to have either.
So you wouldn't carry on with the sparkling wine?
I think not.
No, if you carry, that's the trouble. If you carry on with the champagne once you've opened it, you think, oh, I've got another bottle. That is dangerous as far as I'm concerned, because it can wreck your Christmas Day if you have an argument.
It can. Or if people start going to sleep. You know, and there's no conversation because half the people... Exactly.
And how about presents? Because I remember when I went to my ex's family for the first time for Christmas, I bought the whole family Christmas presents and it looked like I was like Mrs. Santa Claus. Is it just getting the key family members presents?
Well, for a start, whoever's family you're going to, if they're coming to my family, you set the rules. Don't just buy something like a box of chocolates or a bunch of flowers for the hostess. Not to spend too much, because that makes other people feel uncomfortable.
That's where I went wrong.
Yes.
And the royal family do this, don't they?
Under
they actually
£5.
and they have joke presents.
Yes.
To actually sort of... So you've got the thought going into it, but it's really not to spend money, it's to have something that's is pertinent to that particular guest.
Absolutely. And also, at the moment, when things are so tough, keep it cheap, as cheap as possible. I have a large family because I'm one of 4 and a lovely lot of nieces, great nieces, nephews. So I buy them a family thing, and I'm just getting them some chocolates and a Christmas decoration this year because they've got everything anyway. They don't, and it means that we're not strapped for cash by the end of Christmas.
I think a bauble is a nice present.
Are you sending cards this year?
Hardly any.
Really?
No. Partly
more
because
and more people are doing this, and
Yes.
obviously because of the postal strike's worrying them, but it just costs so much
cost
now with the
is
postage and the
enormous.
cards.
Yes, so people I really don't see and haven't seen, then I send a card. But actually, I do WhatsApp with my little Christmas Christmas greeting on to everybody else.
And is it a little poem, or is it a little something amusing, or do you just say Merry Christmas?
Well, I have written a book called Nice Bear, no, they're called The Good Manners Bears. So the Christmas bear says Happy Christmas on my WhatsApp.
Oh, right.
I'll tell you what, we've got some Christmas postcards from our lovely viewers this morning. I think we've managed to kick the computer around the hole and got it working. So shall we have a look at some of your lovely pictures? This is from Mike. And, oh, yeah, that's Snow. Now, I'm not sure where you are.
Keeping the in-laws happy. Looks like he's put the in-laws in the back garden. But no, I think it's the wrong strap for the...
Yeah, I'm not sure what that one. The next one is from Paul.
Oh, that's a nice
And I
one.
think that might be in Scotland.
Crawford in
Sure.
Scotland, we think, maybe?
We hope, if that's from Paul McGrearty. From Beth. This is from Beth in Denbighshire. Ooh, that looks quite wild and gorgeous.
That looks quite deep as well. And
Barbara with Sunny. Let's have a look.
Oh,
Sunny, who loves the snow.
Who needs green paint on him, eh?
Nobody.
Leave him alone.
That's absolutely lovely. My little dog is so short that when she goes out in snow, her paws get all so covered in snow, she just ends up being... she can't move. I have to carry her home.
And the pet dog at the Christmas table, allowed or not?
Well, again, check on the pet policy when you go to anyone's house. Don't take a dog unannounced because...
oh, gosh, no.
No, and people do, though.
They might prefer turkey.
Thank you so much for coming in and giving us your tips. Thank you to Stephanie, absolutely fab as always. Thank you to Mark for stepping into the breach.
And thank you to the computer engineers outside.
And from us, goodbye.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move. If you've not yet